get started with Corporate Services Committee. We are missing a couple directors so far, so hopefully, oh, here comes Sherry. We see her joining in. And we're missing Director Bush, it looks like. Possibly, okay. So welcome to Director Sherry Philpott Dickory, who is filling in for Director Bauer today. So welcome, Sherry. Great to have you here with us. And so folks, we're going to get started now with Corporate Services Committee. So please have a look at your agendas. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Director Monteith moved by and seconded by Director Roberts. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? That motion carries. We'll go to the first item, Civic Ready and transition to Buoyant Alert. For information only, CAO Newell.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So we've been using Civic Ready as our mass notification tool for a couple of years now, and we've had a good uptake on it, especially through the emergency management activities that we've been doing. And we found a better platform that we're thinking of moving on to. So I'm going to get Ms. Malden to give us an update on what we've got planned.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Malden.
Thanks very much. So as the CEO mentioned back in 2018, when our communication efforts were just in their infancy, we wanted to develop a mass notification system. We figured that was a good way to capture a lot of communications in some of our more rural areas, as well as our heavily or populated ones. So we went with Civic Ready. It was a great fit at the time. It seemed to serve all the needs, the purposes that we had. And we did promote it heavily, and we had a lot of people sign up. So we get this question from the board, how many exactly? And as you can see in the attachment, there's a whole bunch of different groups. So I just included that whole thing for you so you could see how many different groups we have and how many people in each. And I think the uptake, as the CAO says, is really good. We stopped promoting it quite so heavily a while back because Civic Ready had been taken over by a larger corporation who didn't necessarily have the customer service communications that we needed. And so we struggled a little bit with it, and we knew we were getting some feedback from the public that it maybe wasn't the best system for us at this point. So yes, we've decided to switch. Civic Ready has indicated that they can no longer maintain any of their Canadian customers. So we did a fair bit of research here from the emergency standpoint and the regular notification standpoint as well, with various working groups within the organization. And Buoyant Alert looks like a really good system that we can implement quite easily. The transition should not be too onerous for anyone. And the good thing about it is that a lot of the neighboring regional districts use it as well. And what that means for people who are signed up is that when you're traveling to a different region, if you're connected with Buoyant in your own region, you're going to get the notifications in the region you're in as well. So that's a really excellent tool for those who are traveling from place to place. So it's got a lot of different functionality that I think we'll enjoy. So I included a rough communications plan in here. We'll tweak that as we go and as we start to move more into the transition, but I wanted the board to get a look at what it is we actually plan to do. So this new system does the day-to-day and emergency notifications. It gives the subscribers an option as to sort of what services they want, just like our current Civic Ready. What I liked about it, and I saw with a lot of other mass notification systems, is that they are only mobile app. You know, if you have a mobile phone and you're willing to download the app, then you'll get the notifications. This one still stays with the landline, the mobile app, and texting. So I think that serves the needs of our public more, especially those with landlines and things like that. So they will sign up, obviously, and get their notifications that way. This product has advanced geofencing. So what that means is, for example, I will get a water notification, a boil water notification or something like that for a system that is in my electoral area. but it's not my water system. And the reason for that is there's some limitations on how we can notify people right now. So with the new system, you'll punch your address in, and then you're in a sort of a geofencing area where only those within a certain address range or a certain area that we draw on the map will get the notification. So that will help to alleviate some of the confusion that people may get when they say, I got a notification about this water system, but I'm not on that. So we expect to see less calls regarding that going forward. They use the QR code. So that's that little square box that you can wave your phone over, and it automatically will help walk you through the process to sign up. That's an easier way for people to get on it. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to sign up. So, and it has sub-regional billing capabilities. So if some of our member municipalities want to come onto this, they have all the technology, all the uses, same things that we do, and we're able to bill them sub-regionally within our system. So that's, again, easier and in the end, less expensive for everyone. So we're looking at a one-time data import. So shortly, we're going to start to notify people through the media and through Civic Ready, through any, sort of methods we can, that we are transitioning to a new product. So we'll start to work with our Civic Ready customers to transition them over. We can take the data that we currently have and transition it to Voyant without, as I mentioned, a bunch of pain to anybody, but it is going to take a little bit of time, and there will be a few little glitches in that. So we've built into our project some funding for staff to help walk them through the process. What we'd like is for every single person who is on Civic Ready to transition to Voyant. That's optimistic, but I think we can certainly make sure that the transition is easy for them so that people do want to get onto the new system. There's going to be a ton of questions and some issues that we'll identify along the way. So making sure that we have a staff person there available just to work with them and help get through that process will be good. Once we can get out and about in the communities, we would like to go out and have some workshops. We'd like to do it in conjunction with other events that we're doing in the community. Hey, sign up here. And we're going to heavily promote it again once we get onto this new system, because I think mass notification is a valuable tool in any local government. So again, I put the Appendix A in there because those numbers were quite informative to me. I didn't realize we had quite so many sign up for some of them. Area D, lots of sign up in Area D in all of the different areas. So in all of the different categories. So I think that's terrific. And some of the others are less, but I just thought the board might find that quite interesting. So our process will start here fairly soon. I think we'll put out our first info release on Monday, and then we'll start transitioning from there. So what I noticed the last time we unrolled Civic Ready, board members were some of our best promoters of this, and I'm hoping that we can do that again. And if anybody wants to see a demo of what this looks like, we'll make the time to do that, because again, I think it's really important if our board members, our directors have an understanding of what this product can do, and then promote it out in the communities. I've seen it on Facebook sites and that kind of thing, and I think that really encourages people to sign on as well. So if anybody wants to touch base after the meeting, we sure can. And if anybody has questions, I'm open now to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Malden. There are some questions. I'll go to Director Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. Thanks for that. Really appreciate what you're doing and where we're going with this. My question is, and again, with Civic Ready, which was a challenge as well, Area G's got a lot of people that would be utilizing landlines, etc. Is it possible, whether if we're not going to do it RDOS wide, as a director, could I choose an Area G to make sure that we have a mail out that gives a specific rundown, explanation, and a how-to?
Go ahead, Ms. Malden.
We could do that if you'd like to discuss that, and we can give you an idea as to what the costs would be on that, by all means.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Monteith.
To the chair, I recall being at a irrigation district meeting for my community, and there was talk of our irrigation district aligning with the Okanagan Water Basin Board with their notification system. Is this connected, or is that once again separating the two? Because that would mean my community would have to have two different notification systems to be able to be fully notified of any situations in my community.
Do you know, Ms. Malden?
Yeah, so KID and OBWB may have arrangements for water notifications. That would be outside of the regional district program. So you could double check with them, but I wouldn't assume anything would change there.
Yeah, follow-up, Director Monteith?
To the chair, I guess my question, or I guess I'm wanting to know if Toledo Irrigation District or the Okanagan Falls Irrigation District or any irrigation district can partner with the regional district so that residents only have to have one notification system. So I'm just, if it's complicated, we're just making it harder for rural users to use the system.
Go ahead, Christy.
So yes, we're absolutely promoting that, and I know we've had some phone calls from a couple of separate irrigation improvement districts already. It's easy to partner with them. Again, the cost recovery is super basic, and billing them separately is not an issue. So that was our goal, is to try to get everybody in the region pretty much on the same system. So I think what you'll find with OBWB is they're on Civic Ready as well, because we all went through that process at the same time. They may find they're also looking for a new provider, and certainly we would be open to partnering with them, OBWB as well. Lots of our notifications are to do with water and water quality and shortages and stuff. So it seems to me perfectly reasonable that we may partner on those sorts of things as well.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Director Gittins.
Thanks to the chair. So it's no secret that I love Civic Ready. I think it's an amazing program. And I think that this one looks like it's jumping us quite a bit ahead and addressing some gaps from Civic Ready. So I think that's fantastic. I am curious about the cost difference, just out of curiosity, but I think like the extra technology that this program is bringing is really great. So I'm curious about that, if I could also just get an answer to that, and then also just request if we could just find some time in the whole board meeting to do a demo. I think it'd be worthwhile sharing it with the board.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Malden.
So the cost difference is not that much. We were quite worried. In the beginning, we thought we were going to be paying significantly more, but we pay roughly $11,000 annually now for the Civic Ready system. We'll pay $18,000. And again, as more users come on and more different groups come on, that price may be expected to rise because it is based on population. But again, we would be billing those different organizations for use, so we would recover the cost then. So not a huge additional cost for much more service. And as for a demo, if the board wanted a demo, we'd be happy to show them for sure.
Great.
Okay. A follow-up, Director Gittins?
Yeah, just thanks. I think it's money well spent. So great job. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. I'll go to Director Knodel now. Go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. I think this is where Director Monteith was going, but in an area like Area C, where the town of Oliver controls the water on a great portion of the rural and the native band in another couple of areas, would the town of Oliver automatically, as part of this board, being represented on this board, be automatically included in this? And then we'd have to petition the OIB. Is that what I'm hearing?
Ms. Malden?
Sorry. So they would not be automatically included, but they would be very much welcome to sign up into the program with us. So at the moment, the program is funded through electoral area. So it is electoral area specific only. But again, we have the capacity to bring on all different numbers of partners and would be looking to do so.
Just to follow up on that, because so much of this is in the electoral area, would I be funding that sign up for the town of Oliver? I'm just trying to see how to manage the financial portion of this. You know, as it is, as the irrigation portion from that Oliver owns is primarily Area C. I don't believe that really reaches into the town itself. So the financial obligation, would that not fall to Area C?
I'm going to go to CIO Newell on this. Go ahead, please.
The regional district doesn't get to tell other governments or agencies that they have to sign on to our programs. So once we get set up on the new platform, we can certainly reach out and make available the opportunity for them to sign on, and then we can come back with more definite costs or legislative requirements as far as that goes. We wouldn't want to confuse constituents as to what we're responsible for. So we'd want to take a look at that as well. I'm sure that the town of Oliver and the Oliver water system wouldn't want residents to think that that was an RDOS service. There would be some other factors that we'd have to look at on that. So I think at this point, just for information, Civic Ready isn't doing the job for us anymore. We're moving on, and we can work out these other details as far as cooperation once we get onto the new platform and see how it works.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll go back to Director Gettens. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one quick request as well, if we do a demo with the board. If we could hear the internal process of how this system works and when, I think one thing with Civic Ready that I've experienced is inconsistency in the use of it from the different departments. So if we can get that addressed to make sure we're always doing the same thing and we can build up an expectation that citizens can rely on, I think the program will get more uptake as well.
Okay, thank you. And Director Monteith, back to you.
To the chair, I'm really hesitant to move forward with a program change when we haven't consulted the member municipalities and we're not moving together on this. When we introduce a change at a regional district, you know, when we have constituents that are having multiple services, it's going to create confusion. And I'm wondering if we can take the time and reach out to the member municipalities and move together versus moving separate, because if we move separate, we're creating confusion.
Ms. Malden, are you able to respond to that one?
Sure. So we've reached out to the member municipalities to determine what kind of notification system they currently use, and nobody uses anything with consistency. And a lot of them are, of course, with the smaller municipalities, it's a database. You know, it's a database as to their constituents, whoever wants to sign up. Nobody that I'm aware of is using Civic Ready or Voyant or any of those types of systems. I know the city of Penticton has a system, and it is app-based only. So the other methods, the phone, landline, that sort of thing, aren't available. So with our constituents, a lot of them rely on those landlines and texts and that sort of thing. So we have reached out. We have determined what the other the member municipalities are using, and because time is of the essence as well, we know Civic Ready will not continue after November, and we've done our research. We know this is a excellent product, so we're fairly confident moving forward with this that it may attract some of our member municipalities to come on board as well.
Okay, thank you. Director Canola, go ahead, please. Oh, you're on mute, Director Canola.
One other issue comes to mind for Area C, and I'm not sure it probably affects a couple other areas too. But we have irrigation customers that draw their water from the river directly. Who is responsible for that water usage? Does that become the OPWB, or do we carry responsibility for a water restriction on usage?
Go ahead, Ms. Malden.
We have no responsibility for that. I believe that would be OBWB or perhaps the province.
Okay, thank you. I've got Director Holmes and then Director Spencer Coyne. Go ahead, Director Holmes.
Yeah, just I guess to reassure Director Monteith, Summerland, we've never had a notification system, and it's something that we're looking at right now. And the communication with the RDOS has been really good, and the full intention is to align. So.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Director Holmes. Go ahead, Director Spencer Coyne.
I was going to say something similar to what Director Holmes just said. Town of Princeton has its own app that we use. I think the Village of Karamia is the only one that uses Civic Ready in out of the member municipalities. Other than that, I think everybody does their own thing. I think we're over complicating this right now. This is ending in November. We don't have a lot of options here. So I think looking at it as a member municipality, I've already sent Christy a message asking her what the cost of this would be for the town of Princeton. If it's feasible, then we might opt into it. So that's all I gotta say.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, directors? Not seeing any other hands up here. Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Ms. Malden. We look forward to a further update and a demonstration for the board at some point in the future. Would be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So directors, we'll go on to the next item, Information System Security Assessment for information only. I'll go to CIO Newell.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I'm going to bring Mr. Francisco in on this one. The board may recall back in 2019, we had in our corporate business plan and our budget to undertake a information technology assessment. And we started on that in early 2020 when Mr. Bovmeester was still here. And then, of course, we had the transition in March 2020 with Mr. Francisco. So we got off to a bit of a slow start, and then COVID hit. And where I'm going with this is that in August of 2020, we were well underway on the information technology assessment. And then on August 10th, we had our cyber attack, and we asked the consultants at that point to go back and include more of a security focus on the IT assessment. And we had that report from our IT assessment consultants earlier this year. And they came up with a lot of recommendations for us, and we're building those into the 2021 business plan and budget. In fact, some of our COVID financing went to IT improvements. This is not that. This is the other part of it. The regional district has cyber insurance, and on August 10th, when we were infiltrated, we advised our insurer, and they appointed some forensic auditors and some consultants experienced in security to undertake an investigation and then come up with more of a risk management plan from a security point of view. And it's taken us a while to get this into a form that we could present on. And I know Danny's been working on this. Most of the information is technical in nature, is from a security point of view. It's sort of the back end of the information services systems that we have. So the reports that we got from the consultants would be so redacted by the time that we got them out for public information that what I've asked Danny to do is just give us a report, sort of high level, on where the forensic audit came out of this. And we don't want to be giving the bad guys any inside information on our systems and how to infiltrate them. So that poses part of the problem. So we're going to take a bit of a different track on this than we did with the IT assessment, where we had the consultants come in and take the board through the report. This one is just going to be Danny, and he's going to make sure that no proprietary information gets out. So with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, CAO. All right, just doing two hats here, so hopefully this works. As Director Newell, CAO Newell mentioned, gonna try to keep this at a high level. There's a lot of detail in the forensic report. and a lot of information there that can't be public because it actually describes the vulnerabilities that they were able to find through the systems. And that report is really a kind of report for us to work and look at mitigation strategies for those details. But I can go a bit kind of over this process and a bit of refresher what it means and kind of what happened a year ago and what's happened since that time. Moving on, vectors of attack. If you haven't seen the slide, I think I presented this before to the board, but there are many avenues of attack now that exist to any organization, and they keep on multiplying and becoming more complex and much more intelligent. It's very easy to get caught up in any kind of cyber attack type of situation now. The sophistication of these attacks are increasing year over year. The industry is experiencing billion-dollar costs now in regards to cyber incidences. It's something that just cannot be ignored moving forward at all. In the sense of how most cyber attacks happen, give you a quick little process. This is similar to the process that we experienced. There's always some kind of reconnaissance or scanning of the environment or purchasing of information on the dark web or some piece of data that gets going in the sense of different organizations being attacked. It's happened in many ways. Thumb drives on the streets, giving free beer tickets at a soccer game to give company information. It's amazing how exploits and how much information people are willing to give away when it comes to getting a free beer. But anyway, these are all kind of examples that have happened and different ways that the criminals have used to really entice people to give up information. A lot of phishing schemes where they pretend to be someone in your organization, like your chair, and saying, hey, can you send this information? They continue a dialogue until they have another piece of information to get further in. So there's always that scanning, reconnaissance. Eventually they do get some access, and then they start trying to decide what type of attack they want to do against your organization and exploit any of the underlining things that may not be patched or systems that may be out of date, multitude of different ways that they can go and actually proceed to deliver their payload. I want to take you back a year now to the first day in the RDOS. So on the first day, we basically experienced 35% of our workstations were touched, 95 of our servers, off-site backup, all of those kind of items. A lot of what was in-house was affected, but kind of the process that they went about to attack us fell apart. In the process of trying to compromise these systems and actually deliver what we were a ransomware attack through encryption of all of our systems so that we couldn't access our data, and then we would have to pay to get our data back. They ended up crashing the main system. Like many organizations these days, we run on a virtual platform. So what it means is we take one box, carve it up into smaller boxes, and those boxes run our email, they run our file services, they run our logins, those kind of things. When they crashed the main system, they basically kicked themselves out. So they weren't able to complete their attack. They weren't able to complete the encryption process along with them. There were no backdoors that were put in at the time on the firewalls for them to try to circumvent such a situation. And because we were so heavily virtualized, as soon as that crash happened, basically all systems were offline. That actually protected us. So that crash ended up providing the protection from the malware running its course, and also from the attackers gaining any more access. That's also made it easy for us to just turn off the internet and then start to investigate where they went, how much reconnaissance was done, what systems were affected, and to what a degree. Because it was an on-premise attack, none of our cloud services that we utilized were really compromised. Any of those connections are made with different connection strings, and they come, a lot of them with different passwords as well. So the information wasn't even available necessarily on site to expose the other systems. To go back a year, this is what we were like. And this is kind of the importance of how critical this can happen. We were back to, in 2020, communication was done by paper, handwritten checks, sneaker networks, for those of you who don't know, is delivering pieces of information while walking, that's sneaker networks, and then paper binders and policies. That's where we were in 2020, about a year ago this time. So it is a huge effect on an organization when these systems are taken offline like that. We go to our first week. So our first week, a new experience for the organization. We had cyber insurance, which again is not commonplace. It's becoming commonplace, but is not commonplace for every organization. Anyone that's involved in any kind of IT should be considering it if they haven't done so already. All of our plans, of course, kicked into place. This was a huge effect to the organization, much like losing a building or something of that nature. It affected everybody, and it affected our constituents as well, and being able to get information, things like that. Because it was a localized attack, a lot of our website services and cloud services were up, so some communication was still possible, but everything was severely dampened and limited, of course, for those of you that were here and remember it. In a nutshell, this is kind of what came out of the forensic audit. The first sign of entry was on July 25th, when I mentioned about the reconnaissance phase. So at that time, they had found an account that was valid and gave them access. They were able to look around and see what kinds of systems were available, what they figured they could try and attack. During this time period, there was a little bit of noise on some of our systems about, malware being attempted, kind of normal entries that would see. Because it was done in such a low-lying level, it was on the noise floor. It's kind of like the normal, we get thousands of viruses, notifications, emails that are already tracked, and a lot of this causes a noise level or a notice level of, that's kind of commonplace. There's no such thing as seeing one attack one day and think, oh my God, that needs to be looked at. It's now into hundreds of them. So there's a kind of noise floor that gets established, and then most softwares like the ones we had build that noise floor in, and then when things seem to go above that, they start alerting you in more aggressive manners. So a lot of this stuff was happening from the 25th to the 10th, and this noise floor type of venue. And I do want to make a correction. I've realized here that in your report, it says the first day of the attack script was August 9th. It is actually August 10th, so that is a correction that we'll need to make. August 10th is when they actually decided to initiate their attack, run the scripts, decide what they were going to do and the type of attack. And so as you can see, there's a period of time that they were in there starting to find out how to do their damage. One point of note is that when they came in as a normal user with actually a limited user in this case, because it was just a test account. So it's not that they had administrative rights at the 25th of July. The administrative rights came on August 10th. That's when they had acquired enough information to figure out a vulnerability to build themselves an administration type of account, therefore being able to carry out the attack. So in the July timeframe, they were just really browsing around as a limited user, just poking around, see what was accessible to them. The type of attack was also a benefit to us. It was an early type of a PISA ransomware attack. These attacks develop over time. According to the forensic auditing company that was looking at this, they said, had we had this attack in February this year, it would have been much more aggressive. It has evolved since the August timeframe of 2020 and is much more potent and much more thorough, and likely would have not crashed as it did last year. The origin of the attack, the most that they could get was that it came from a European IP block. These things are difficult. They use many layers of attack to really, exploit somebody. It's not very often that we find where their origin actually happens. They can be jumping from Europe to Korea to China, back to Russia, and then through the States. It makes it very difficult to do this kind of attacks, and since and government involvements across the world would need to be coordinating that. It's not easy at all to find out who actually did the attack. The compromised account was just a test account where we weren't able to actually figure out how that test account was moved into that area. So test accounts are typically accessible only from an internal computer system. This one At some point, it was in an external area. That external area, of course, gave them the first leg in to come in as a normal user, which again is still a limited service, but it's the first step into the door. So I can imagine your home, the perpetrator coming into your front door and hang out in the lobby for a few weeks. And after a bit of time, they might kind of figure out your patterns, kind of what you do, where you go grocery shopping, things like that. Just any information that helps them get further into the home. That's what's happened here. Ransom paid, as I said earlier, because the attack never completed. The crash bumped them out before they could complete it. There was no ransom paid. None of that has happened, no transactions of any kind. Recovery time, well, 7 months from when this report was produced. So it took about 3 months to get basic services up and running and kind of get functional. And then the other 5 months was just really dealing with recommendations, looking at fine tuning, having forensic company go and do their internal scans of the systems to see if there was any lingering code that might be, ready to attack later down the road. As part of the ransomware, the cyber insurance protocol, they actually had us install kind of back-end monitoring piece of software on all of our devices, and it ran for months just to verify that there was no lingering code anywhere in our systems. And as for the cost, that came at it was just the cost of the deductible for our cyber insurance. I'm not sure what the total cost would have been in the sense of the cyber insurance experts and them coming in. Those costs are all covered by our insurer. So I'm not privy to those kind of costs, but out of pocket for us was $15,000. So what happened? We had firewalls, we had password policies, we had ransomware software, encrypted hard drives, all of the stuff that you're supposed to have, and yet they were still able to get in. It comes to the fact that all of this stuff is important, but it's not the end. It's not everything that we do need to be getting into. Modern cyber crime is getting much more sophisticated. So these tools are all required, and there's ways around most of these tools, even in today's world. So we're looking at new types of technologies, and also the amount of time that it takes to implement a technology like this and then deploy it and then keep it operational. So the time to attack is becoming really short, 0 day in some circumstances. So if you don't respond the second you get notification about that type of incident happening, you could be compromised. So that requires a different level of resources and a different level of tools. You need tools that are monitoring your system 24/7. You need people and staff to be able to respond and make those recommendations and changes or bring down those services before they get attacked. It's just a different world. This now just has to be part of our DNA moving forward. And the other thing is to be aware that it's a cultural change, because it's not just IT department that's responsible for this. It becomes the whole organization. There's a bit of responsibility for everybody in the sense of the safety of the network and the information services, much like the safety of our employees is everyone's responsibility. Much of this stuff is now starting to come into that vein. So there's a bit of cultural awareness that has to happen, a bit of training, and especially when it comes to phishing schemes that go there with email, things like that. We have to do more of that to get ahead of this game. The other thing that, of course, we have to be much more cognitive of is the fact that dark web exists and that a lot of the information is out there. Just a little bit of dollars, you can generally get the information you need for any organization. You can buy a login ID like the one that we had that was compromised off the dark web. These are not things that we can kind of ignore anymore. We have to be aware that a lot of information is out there. Many systems have been compromised. Data is being shared at a phenomenal rate, and the complexity and capability of these attacks is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we have to keep that in context now as we move forward and look at new systems. Going over the actual report from CFC, so the overall risk score they gave us in March, basically once they were done their completed factors, was one of critical. And I kind of want to explain that because it looks bad on the surface. But it isn't too bad right now. Critical is because they took the summation of all of their different types of scans. So when they looked at our assessment, they scanned the types of programs we have, the age of our computer systems, the network, the servers, the processes that are in place, the types of technologies we're using to detect infiltration, all those kinds of took it into effect. So in those three kind of pillars of their assessment, they found that this one scored critical. This is an internal thing about the types of applications, how much patching was being done, how quickly the patching was being done, what operating systems we have. And this is a bit of a complex situation. Some of the devices that we use, for instance, controllers that may be attached to SCADA systems, things like that, are running dated operating systems because they weren't designed to really be a computer system as much as a controller to some pump or some system. Those systems aren't necessarily easily upgraded to just Windows 10 because they weren't designed to necessarily work with that. So some of these systems take longer time to mediate and may require additional costs, especially if a vendor isn't able to provide an updated controller piece of software that runs on a computer. Like I say, many things they're using a computer as a utility device, not as a compute device. However, it is a device, if on the network and not protected, can cause an issue. To try and mitigate some of those things, over the last 6 months, we have actually proceeded to isolate these devices. So even though they're running compromising operating systems, they don't necessarily have direct access at all now to the internet or other parts of the network. We've also gone through some of these more critical systems and brought them into the IT fold. SCADA was not something that IT used to be involved with in prior years. We've taken an approach to be highly involved now, only because many of these systems are now on the network or internet, and hence now can be susceptible to these types of attacks. So that is something that's changed in the last 6 months. We put out new routers, new servers, isolated the networks. Production networks have been isolated from management networks. All of that kind of situation was able to happen during the attack. While we were in kind of the remediation steps, we were able to make in some changes. As systems were all off, we were able to put in, do some heavy lifting on some best practices because all the systems were off. So there was a bit of a cleanup that happened right away that was beneficial to us. The other assessment they did was network here. This talks to more about what kind of technologies do we have protecting our systems. So do we have any kind of artificial intelligence? Do we do any dark web scanning? Do we have systems that do third-party patching, not just patching our main systems, Microsoft, some of our critical programs, but all types of programs out there, something that actively goes out and scans the hundreds of different programs that we have for any of the patches that are available. So those are kind of things where, again, we scored a little bit weakly on in the sense of having tools and capabilities. These tools require resources, sometimes people, sometimes dollars. Giving you an idea of a tool we have been looking at, we did get some demo tools in place. We've been looking at one called Dark Trace. It's a 24/7 artificial intelligence type of platform that it's not looking at viruses and things. It's looking how is the network being used. What kind of traffic's going from one person to the next? What type of traffic? Is it going across devices or is it coming from the server? Where is it coming from? These types of information become critical now to identify, is there a threat happening? That's a piece of technology that we are looking at to invest in the future. They're not cheap. They're tens of thousands of dollars. They require skilled staff to monitor and kind of report out. But those are the types of technologies that we really have to look at seriously in the future. So we didn't score as well there. The last one we scored very good in was our perimeter. So this was kind of like the outside shell. So to the list we had before, the outside firewalls, the penetrations coming in, again, not much was detected here. There was a couple of incidences through the course of the 5 months when they were monitoring our system. This kind of protected our outside wall. And it does show where we need to move forward in the future is really in the understanding of not necessarily believing that who's ever coming in is valid, even if they presented a valid name and password and did their two-factor authentication. We need to look at systems that look at that behavior and then say, is the behavior normal, not just the right keys, if you will, getting in, because that's as the world moves on, those keys are easier to acquire and easier to manipulate, and that's just a fact of life. So we're very good on our perimeter. We've got the time to work on that internally. Some of the places that we've already put in place help us get that information about who's logging in. We now get daily notifications of any new accounts that have been created for any purpose. Third-party patching has now been put in place, so we have software that going out examining the thousands of pieces of software, deploying critical patches as they come available that day if need be. So we are moving the bar closer to their recommendations. So moving forward, the assessment was put in place. Those recommendations were listed in the previous report. Third-party penetration, we've done that for this week or this year. That has to happen yearly. Previously, there were a few scans done, but they were spaced up between 3 and 5 years. This is now a budget item. We have to do cyber penetration and third-party audit networks basically yearly. It's come to that type of situation. Resources, I said earlier, dark monitoring, possibly security analysts, and artificial intelligence as well, and internally. These are all newer tools that are required just because of how the world has evolved. Education and safety, this is a cultural change. It's for the organization. So working with HR, we've had some discussions already in the sense of how to incorporate some of the best practices, training, implementing phishing schemes and testing so that our employees feel confident in their ability to navigate this new world of cybersecurity. IT's become a utility. I've mentioned that before to the board. We have to think of it and treat it as such. It is one of our key resources now moving forward, whether we like it or not. That's the way it's become. And then regional thinking. That's another one where a lot of these systems are not cheap. They require sophisticated level of skills. It's something that I think it's hard for any organization to pull off, and more broadly, maybe being able to deal with this at a regional level, working with partner groups, we may be able to share some of those resources or even some of the services or partner on some of those more expensive monitoring types of tools and get the benefit for everyone in the region. So that's part of my mandate moving forward to do some of that. And any questions? Oh, that's a chair's job, I can told, so.
Okay, thank you very much, Danny. Maybe if you could take that down off the screen and I could see the board members. Are there any questions for Danny on his presentation? Okay, having a look here, not seeing any hands up. Nope. Okay, CAO Newell does. Go ahead, CAO. Oh, and then I see Director Vasilaki. So go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, so I'll just add in on what Danny said. Part of our requirement for our cybersecurity package is that we provide training on security throughout the organization. That includes the board. So we will have something this fall coming back just on security training for elected officials to make sure that we comply with our insurance our requirements. So this isn't the end for you. This is something that we all have to do together, and we'll be back at you in a month or so.
Okay, thank you. Director Vasilaki, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Danny, you know, you lost me after the second minute of your information given. And I'm sure some of the others have lost you as well. Please, in the near future, if you happen to have any time at all, if you can give me a call and I'll come down to the office and you can explain it to me in a simpler fashion so I can understand what you were talking about. Even though I have a degree in computers, I'm computer illiterate with the modern age. So I need more more information, a lot more than most need. So please, if you can give me a call and we can meet, it'll be great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Directors, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so that does take us to the end of corporate services, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Director Ghgs, seconded by Director Robinson. I'll call the question. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. So that takes us to Protective Services Committee up next, and I will turn things over to Chair Roberts. Go ahead, please, Chair Roberts.
Thank you to the chair. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda of Protective Services? We have Director Coyne and Director Knodel. All in favor? Thank you. I'd just like to pass it over now to CAO Newell.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to get Danny to bring up a couple documents that we'll share. These are as current as I could make them, so they didn't go out with the agenda last week. As you're aware, emergency events are move quickly, so I didn't think it would be that beneficial to give you something a week old already. So if we can put up the Word document first, Danny. Okay, so two pieces of this. First of all, I'm just going to give you the update under Protective Services. And then later on this morning on the board agenda under the CAO report, we'll be doing our typical thing where we ratify the extensions to the 4 states of local emergency, 4 or 5. We'll figure that out. And because under the Emergency Program Act, we can only declare a state of emergency for 7 days, and then we have to keep extending them if they pass that 7-day mark. So since we were with you 2 weeks ago, we've had a number of extensions. Okay, so let's just sort of look at this chronologically. Back on, and as usual, these things always happen on a weekend or at 2 in the morning. So the current state out there has not changed. It's very dry, tinder dry. We've had really no rain, and we're just rife for a wildfire and additional wildfires. I don't think we're out of this yet, but we do have 4 fires of note within the regional district of Okanagan-Similkameen, and I want to just give you an update on that. So first of all, we'll talk about states of local emergency later on under the board meeting. The legislative foundation for this is the Emergency Program Act, and we have 2 requirements under the Emergency Program Act. Every local government does. We have to have an emergency response plan, and we have to have an emergency response organization, which we do. So we work off of that. And then on top of that, this board has a regulatory bylaw that sets out what our emergency organization looks like. Our first significant event occurred on July 11th. And of course, it was a Sunday afternoon. Typically, what would happen is we would get a call on the duty phone from the Provincial Emergency Coordination Center in Victoria, advising that there was an interface fire somewhere within our regional district. In this case, because it was a Sunday afternoon, lots of people out and about, we had a call from fire dispatch saying that there was a grass fire out on McLean Creek Road in electoral area D, and it was close to people and infrastructure, and that they had already dispatched the Okanagan Falls Fire Department, and I believe Glidden was called in under mutual aid. So we had 2 of our amazing ground forces already on site, and by the time that we got notice, we then activated our emergency response plan and started to resource up the Emergency Operations Center, and we were underway, and we haven't stopped since. So in this case, the fire was very close, sort of about the middle of McLean Creek Road, for those that know Area D, so just off of East Side Road and then up on McLean Creek Road, very close to structures. They haven't assessed how it started yet. They believe it was, we'll say, it was not natural causes, just because of its location and proximity to habitat area. So when we initially responded, of course, BC Wildfire was on this very quickly because of its proximity to inhabited area. And like I say, we already had two volunteer fire departments on site. So we usually wait for BC Wildfire to give us our perimeters. They always give us an area where we need to get people out, and then they give us a perimeter as to where they think it may be moving and where they need to keep people away so that they can do their staging and get their equipment in and make sure that they aren't compromised by that interaction. So when we got that, we initially issued an evacuation order for 77 properties, and we put 627 on alert. And of course, for those again that know the area, very close to Heritage Hills. Wasn't as far north as Heritage Hills, it was south of that. The wind was blowing to the southeast, so it wasn't moving in that direction, but nevertheless, lots of people in that area. It started off very small grass fire. It grew exponentially within a few hours, and it is currently at 10,280 hectares in size, and they've had this perimeter for the last few days. So they've been up there working diligently, getting ground lines, fire lines around the fire as to where it might be moving, and it's still ranked as out of control. It's still dangerous. So I'm going to give you specific figures on the orders and alerts, but they seem that the fire seems to be moving, and they're directing it that way, east, away from interface. So the only concern is it still seems to be moving north into that Christie Mountain area, but behind it this time. So still lots of activity. And I'm going to talk about the incoming fire shortly, but there is some concern that if the wind keeps blowing it south, that those two may merge, which would be a huge fire for us. But at this point, the Thomas Creek wildfire is just over 10,000 hectares. There is Penticton Indian Band reserve lands east of the Heritage Hills area. So it did implicate the Penticton Indian Band, so we've been working closely with them. They didn't have any resources that they knew about in the area. There were no farms or residents. So it has blown through the reserve. It's still going east. When we first got notice of this, of course, always what an EOC will do is once we get the perimeters, we then have to do our geographic information systems report. We identify all of the properties that are within the order and alert areas. We define our maps, and then we have to get them out. And in this case, we rely heavily on our search and rescue organizations. So in this case, the Penticton Search and Rescue organization were called up, and they delivered the evacuation orders. We don't normally deliver alert notices hand to hand. We put those out electronically and certainly Civic Ready, but we don't go door to door. So in this case, it was Penticton Search and Rescue, and we always get amazing support from the RCMP as far as traffic control and making people safe. We didn't have a tactical evacuation at this point. Normally, if a first responder, whether it's our CMP, fire, or ambulance, if they're first on scene and they believe that people are in danger, they'll do a tactical evacuation, meaning they just get people out. We worry about the details later. There was no tactical evacuation on the Thomas Creek fire because we had that time, because it was going east, we had time to get organized. So where we are now, and I'll show you these figures, and I want to blow by our 4 fires, and then I want to give you some specific statistics as to where we are. So just scroll down, Danny. Okay. So about 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 15th of July, we got a call about the Brenda Creek wildfire. So this, I think that time is probably wrong. I think, yeah. So the Brenda Creek fire is actually in the central Okanagan Regional District. So it started just north of us, and but very close to our perimeter. And in fact, there are 3 regional districts that are involved in working on the Brenda Creek fire. There's the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, there's the Central Okanagan Regional District, and there's the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen. So all 3 EOCs are up and running and monitoring the Brenda Creek fire. It was actually about 2:30 in the morning on the 15th that we got notified that the fire was moving south towards a small community that we have called Headwaters, which has seasonal residents in there. So when we got that, we were then in a position where we, at 2:30 in the morning, needed to move people out. So once we got that perimeter, we issued orders. I believe there was about 44 properties that were put on order, and then a couple more to the southeast on alert. And currently that fire sits at 824 hectares. It, while it is still ranked as out of control, they jumped on that really quickly. There are some serious transmission lines that BC Hydro has in that area. We know that part of the infrastructure was compromised early in the fire, and that's the one that takes power into the central Okanagan, sort of the Peachland, West Kelowna area. But the wires didn't drop, and they quickly got sprinkler lines out along that transmission line to try and protect that service. Highway 97C, the connector is just to the north of there, and that was of a concern as well, but never was, I don't believe, had to be shut down, but it was, MOTI was standing by on that one. So not only were we working with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, the Central Okanagan Regional District, but we also had to get our evacuation orders out. And for that, we used the Central Okanagan Search and Rescue organization because they were closest. And we also used the Central Okanagan reception center that was already up and running for other fires in their regional district, just because it was closer, more efficient to send residents into Kelowna than it would be to bring them south, based on the way the transportation routes were running. So we were already working closely with them. On the Thompson fire, our reception was set up in Oliver at the Oliver Legion, and I'll explain more about that later as we got into more fires. The third one was called the Inkameep fire. That fire changed names 3 times before they finally ended on Inkameep. But that started on the Osoyoos Indian Band Reserve, about 6 kilometers north of Osoyoos on the east side of the lake. So it initially started out as a response by the Osoyoos Indian Band, and we were notified But we didn't have anything compromised initially. And then the fire continued to move north into the Shrike Hill area, which is in electoral area C. So at that point, we did declare a state of local emergency on electoral area C. And subsequently, as it moved southeast into the Anarchist Mountain area, we declared on electoral area A to protect anarchists. So that fire now is about 16,000 hectares. So it's big, but it is, again, they're steering it out more into the Baldy area, so going east. Although it is still moving, and depending on winds, it's still volatile. So that then is an issue too. So, but nevertheless, we were working in close cooperation with the Osoyoos Indian Band. It was very close to Osoyoos. Osoyoos declared some alerts. So their EOC was up and active. And then the town of Oliver was also concerned about some of their eastern properties too. So their EOC was up and active. We were working closely with all of them. The Penticton Reception Center was providing support for the Oliver Reception Center. The interesting thing about these events is that initially, because the fire started down in Osoyoos, you'd think we'd open up a reception center in the Osoyoos area. We were already using the ESS volunteers from Osoyoos. They were up working in the Oliver Reception Center. We didn't have the resources available to open a second reception center down there. We had already used the Osoyoos Oliver Search and Rescue Association to deliver orders previously. They were getting tapped out. All of our search and rescue organizations have been busy, so they've all been tapped out. So then it becomes a matter of where can we provide a response with the appropriate level of resources. So that's why we stayed with the Oliver Reception Center in the Legion to do all of the Incomeet and Thomas Creek fires. So everybody was involved, engaged there. All the ground fire departments, all of our amazing volunteer firefighters that work in all of our departments and the towns, firefighters were all heavily involved. All of their protecting residents and property and critical infrastructure, and they work closely with BC Wildfire as far as where they're getting tasked. BC Wildfire has a structural division in their incident command system, and they were working closely with our ground fires as well. And then eventually, we know now that with the Thomas Creek fire, that we have Canadian Armed Forces personnel on the ground, and in the Incomeet fire, we have a crew from Mexico that are up to embellish the BC wildfire. We know that there were firefighters from other provinces. There was a Parks Canada wildfire crew in supporting Incomeet. And it's been truly a momentous response. The fourth one, on July 23rd, so on a Friday, we got a call about fire over again in Area H down on the Eastgate area, so down by Manning Park on Highway 3. They called this the Garrison Lake Fire. Produced a lot of smoke, very volatile, grew again really quickly. Started out sort of on the edge of Manning Park in the Eastgate area, but was moving north and still is. It has grown now to 8,175 hectares and is still on the east side of Highway 3. Yeah, so not on the copper mine side of the road yet, but moreover still on the east side of the road. So we immediately evacuated Eastgate We put some properties to the north on alert. There's not a lot in between Eastgate and sort of the Kennedy Lake, Whipsaw, Princeton area, but there are farms, so there's grazing areas in there. And in order for farmers to get support from the province, they have to be on alert. So we put those range rights on alert, and we're in the process now of helping farmers identify where their cattle are in those areas and whether they need to move them or not. So that's underway. Kennedy Lake, while we only have, I think we're showing 4 properties on alert. Kennedy Lake is one of them. It's if the board recalls, was one of those areas that we're trying to straighten out the planning around. There's probably 500 to 700 people at Kennedy Lake, but it all is one property. So they're on alert, and we're keeping a track of the fire progress on their behalf as well. There are some other ones. There's a Cool Creek fire that's over in the Similkameen. I mean, the only property of note on that, we do have some alerts out there, but there is Cathedral Lake Lodge. They seem to get evacuated every year, not because the lodge is in danger itself, but because it has a single access and people have to move in and out of there safely. So that one is really not being responded to by BC Wildfire at this point. It's just burning, and it's not endangering any people or infrastructure. So we didn't have to put Area G on state local emergency, but there is that fire over there. It's not a fire of note. There was another fire down in Manning Park earlier this week. They called it the Fat Dog fire. Again, just out in the middle of nowhere. They're not responding to it. It's burning in Manning Park, but it was smaller and did not affect infrastructure or property. Can you bring up that Excel document, Danny? Okay, so this is just our spreadsheet on the states of local emergency and the extensions, and I'm going to go through that later for you. So hit that next tab. All right, so this is our calculations as to currently what we have. So electoral area D on the Thomas Creek fire, we currently have still 10 properties on evacuation order. Those are the ones further to the east. They're not in the East Side Road or McLean Creek Road area. They're further away. They're larger Crown properties. We still do have 73 properties on alert in Area D, but most of the properties have been moved off of order along East Side Road or McLean Creek Road, the more heavily populated areas. So still, the fire is still moving east, northeast, but at this point, we've got 10 properties on order, 73 on alert. Electoral area H. So this was the Brenda Creek fire. The 44 properties that are on evacuation order, that's headwaters. So that seasonal cabin sort of area. I think there may have been 1 or 2 permanent residents. I'm not sure about that, but nothing of a entrenched community. So we have 44 on order, 14 on alert. Some of those are recreational properties, so there was some campgrounds around there that we put on alert, and that has been stable since that first order was issued. We believe we're going to get that back soon. At this point, they're just stabilizing their irrigation lines along that transmission line from BC Hydro. And I think once they get that cleared up, we're going to be able to open that back up. The Inkameek fire, you can see in electoral area A, we still have 492 properties on alert and 149 on order. So along Highway 3 up through Anarchist, we've reduced the order area significantly. Everything south of the road is now on alert, and in that Raven Hill, Sidley area, we've started to reduce the number on order and move them to alert. One of the issues is BC Wildfire doesn't like residents around when they're working, establishing ground lines or fire perimeters or putting irrigation or doing back burning. So they're cautious about when they're going to release a perimeter so that people can go back in. And we believe that shortly they're going to have that fire moved out of the heavily populated areas, and we're going to be able to get everybody back in Area A. Area C is more that Schweig Hill, close to the town of Oliver area. We still have 66 properties there on order, 439 on alert. There was a bit of a flare-up on some of the OIB lands late last night. We thought we were going to be able to reduce that order area as well, but with that flare-up close to the Schweig Hill area, we still have that 66 properties on order. You can see the other agencies there. OIB has their orders in alert on their reserve lands down by Assayas, and that Oliver still has an alert on. Assayas has removed theirs. And I'll talk about reception centers later. So the Garrison Creek one, we still have that 158 properties. That's Eastgate. We still have them on evacuation order. The properties on alert are to the north, and as I mentioned, it indicates here we only have 2. I think there's probably more. There were some Crown leases that we put on alert, but the big one there obviously is Kennedy Lake with that 500 to 700 people. I'm not sure how many are still there, but that was what was there when the fire started. And then you can see we have 6 properties in Area G on the Cool Creek fire that we've got on alert, one of them being Cathedral Lake Lodge. Okay. Next tab. Yeah, thanks. So I wanted to just quantify how many volunteers get involved in these. So this is what we've had in our Emergency Operations Center since the fire started. Let's see. Sorry, these are the reception centers that we've had involved. So 16 volunteers from Penticton are supporting the Oliver Reception Center, and they're doing mostly the callbacks. So what happens with emergency support services now is that people can register electronically. So they go on, they register, and then when the reception center staff get the opportunity, they call them back to provide more information. You can see that Penticton has mostly been the call center for the Oliver Reception Center, and they've already spent over almost 600 hours responding on calls to keep people informed. 17 volunteers at the Oliver Reception Center, over 104 hours. We've had 7 of the Soyuz ESS volunteers up working at the reception center, and you can see we had 1 from Karameas and then 3 out of the Naramata ESS group that were also providing support. And then for our search and rescue organizations, the Oliver Soyuz, they had 13 volunteers that were delivering search and rescue, evacuation order notices on the Inkameek fire. Central Okanagan Search and Rescue, we didn't get numbers, but that was on the Brenda Creek fire. They issued the order for those 44 properties. And the Penticton Search and Rescue Organization, they had 24 volunteers working on the Thomas Creek fire. And I mean, the volunteers in these organizations, they all work very closely together. They move up and down the valley. They help out where they can. So some of these volunteers that register for one search and rescue organization, they may have been down helping out another one. And then we had the Princeton Search and Rescue Organization doing the Garrison Creek fire. And you can see the tremendous number of hours that these groups put in. And as usual, we mentioned, they usually happen on a weekend or early in the morning. So for these groups of volunteers to scramble and then get out and deliver those takes a long time, going door to door. Next. So at the reception centers then, you can see out of the Oliver Reception Center, they have touched 874 people, and the ESS volunteers at the Penticton ESS group, they have called back 811 that were looking for additional organizations. So 71, that was the Central Okanagan Emergency Operations Center were supporting Brenda Creek. So the evacuees from Brenda Creek went to Central. So you can see 1,756 people supported. Out of those, we have, of those that needed support, so initially there's a reception part of it, and then if resources are required, if they need lodging or food, that is also done out of the ESS groups. So total, we have 166 that are just staying with friends, so they're being billeted. And then we had 708 that are at hotels. So when somebody comes into a reception center, if they need a place to stay, the first choice is to, if they can't bill it with friends or family, the first choice is to put them in hotel rooms. And then the second, way down the list, choice would be group lodging. But in this case, even in the summer, which is a difficult spot to find a hotel room in this area, there were 708 evacuees that were accommodated. Then you can see that so far we've issued the vouchers for $162,320. And then the hotel rooms as well. We don't actually have the facts on those ones. The ESS groups submit them directly to pre-op for compensation. Okay, Danny. Oh, these were just, we gave you a list. Sorry, we didn't, I didn't send that out. These were just some of the types of calls that we get at the reception center. I'm not going to go through those. I can hit that end. Okay, so we have this amazing group. The acronym is ALERT. So they're the ones, while we're trying to get people out of these compromised areas, they're the ones that take care of the animals. And in this case, and they work very closely with our emergency support services groups at the reception centers. But this is what has been relocated and currently lodged at the Desert Center in Osoyoos from all of our areas. So cats, dogs, horses, smaller horses, chickens, roosters, sheep, goats, pigs, alpacas, peacocks, donkeys, and ducks. You know, over in the Similkameen, that's going to be more cattle, but this is what's going on from the Thomas Creek and the incoming fires. And I'm sure the cattle ranchers, they're getting assistance, but they're just probably taking them to adjacent farms or getting them out of the area. So that is 133 that are currently being supported by the ALERT organization. heating. We have, so the incident command system. When we get into an emergency operations center, of course, we have the EOC director and deputy. We have a liaison officer that's responsible for keeping in touch with everybody that's impacted, all the different agencies and organizations. And then we have 4 main sections. The planning group, they're the ones that get the information, they set the perimeters, they do up the evacuation orders, the alerts, they do all the GIS stuff as far as identifying specific properties that fall into each. They do the advanced planning as to how to get people back in, so the re-entry packages, all of that stuff goes through planning. The operations group, they're site support, so they're about security. When we evacuate people, we want to make sure their properties are secure, so they do that. They're our link with the emergency support services. They're our link with the BC Wildfire, so we have a fire liaison officer. They're our link really with First Nations. We have a First Nations liaison officer that operates out of the EOC. So they do all of that part. And our logistics section, they're the ones that do up all the expense authorization forms and the contracts and send out the invoices and all that sort of stuff. The one group that's key, but not really that active during events, is our finance group. And of course, once the events are over, that's when the lawyers and the accountants and the insurers come out. And that's when we submit our invoices to PREOC for reimbursement. And they're the ones that keep track of all of those records and all the data that we need in order to recover from events. So you can see that on the Thomas Creek fire, we already have $86,000 approved in expense authorization forms. So what happens there is that when they get an expense authorization form from logistics, finance sends that into PREOC, and usually what they'll do is they'll call and they'll get a verbal approval because those guys are busy up there. It takes sometimes weeks before we get a written approval on an expense authorization form. And of course, you can't wait that long during an event. So we'll often go on verbal approval, but you can see that we do have 86,000 approved on the Thomas Creek fire. We've got 206,000 approved on the Brenda Creek fire. We have 306,000 approved on the Incomeep fire, and we're still waiting for approval on $85,000 worth of EAFs on that fire. And you can see we don't have any approvals yet on Garrison Lake, but we've already spent $60,000 out there, and we'll get approvals on that, I'm sure, once PREOC gets to them. So at this point, almost $600,000 approved, 145,000 still outstanding that our finance group will be industriously following up on. Within the Emergency Operations Center, we have had 39 of our staff that have been in there working hard day and night. 6 from Penticton. We've had amazing support from the city of Penticton. When our staff get burnt out, we rely on other organizations. So you can see that Summerland's actually had 2 in there. Oliver's had 1. And of course, not only do we have support for the ones that show up and work in the Emergency Operations Center, but just the liaison, the information, the communications that we have are key. We don't show Princeton on there. We've had really a significant support from the Princeton Emergency Support Services, and we've been working closely with their emergency coordinator through the Garrison Lake fire and getting really good information on how that fire is progressing. So I'm not going to go through a list of organizations or people to thank. I know I would miss somebody and somebody would be insulted by that. But the coordination and cooperation throughout this past month has been significant and widespread. Certainly the Osoyoos Indian Band and Penticton Indian Band have been key. parts of our organization as we work through this as well. So everybody's working together. They're all working well. We did have a bit of an administrative debrief already to look at what we can do better. We'll have a more significant one when the events are over and people have time to write up their notes. But that's where we are right now, Madam Chair.
It's Mr. Chair.
Oh, Mr. Chair, sorry. Talked so much,
Thank
I
you,
lost
C.
track of which committee.
Thank you, CA Newell. That was very informative. Just as we open the floor for questions, I have a small question first to ask. Just knowing that we have the Cool Creek fire in Area G, and you've got 6 on alert, and that is close to the territory of, or even in the territory of the Lower Similkameen Indian Band. Do we have ongoing communication with the LSIB?
You know, I believe we do. We have Don Russell, who used to be a communications officer for the Penticton Indian Band, who's a consultant now, but she is our First Nations liaison within the EOC. I believe she's contacted all of the First Nations, and that she's been out, not only talking to them on the phone, but out to visit them. And I'm almost sure that Lower Similkameen and Upper Similkameen have both been in touch with our EOC.
Thank you. Now, is there any questions for CAO Newell on that extensive report? Director Obrecht.
Yes, and thank you to the chair. For those who don't know, and Director McCorda, thank you very much for your comments before meeting. I was not on holiday. I was in hospital. I had major surgery on July 8th, and I was there. Things are fantastic. Prognosis excellent. But I was in hospital July 11 when the fire broke out. My phone began to blow up, as you can imagine, 2 phones blowing up when the fire began, and with a catheter and an IV and the walker and blood on my gown, and I went down the ward and looked out the south window and watched the plume, the mushroom cloud, rise over our neighborhood. I had call after call after call of people concerned. Now, all of you know that over 70 properties were ordered evacuated, over 600 on the alert. Some of the people were you know, they remembered last year and what it was like. I felt helpless as I watched. I wasn't home. I couldn't help my wife as she scrambled to pack up. And I made it, my dressing burst. I was bleeding. I got a nurse to help me. I talked to the nurse about the fire. They didn't know, but mentioned they had workers who were in the fire, Christie Mountain, last year. And I was in the hospital when the alert came over the public address system. And I didn't know this, but they have an EOC type protocol. And all hands on deck, and wildfire south of Penticton, and evacuate. They had to move people from the emergency room. I didn't know that. And the lady who was taking care of my dressing was being called to prep some rooms. They were short-staffed, they're stressed, they're professional, and they had to move people from the ER into these other rooms. And I was amazed at how fast they took action, what it was like to see it from that community. And you know, having gone through it 2 years in a row and having been evacuated, you know, we know all through our region, this is stunning. You look at the number of people who have been ordered out of their properties, who are afraid. It's stressful for a lot of people. I just thank the CAO, the EOC, all the volunteers. Incredible response. Some of you know, some of you don't know, but Kelvin Hall with Search and Rescue, he lives on McLean Creek Road. I spoke to our fire chief that day. The reports of the excellent work done by BC Wildfire and others, you know, people in the community and the EOC, when it's serious like that, the information doesn't come quick enough, and they can't possibly know all that's going on. But the work they did that night, all those structures, the 77 properties, they were all safe. Animals were protected, livestock. The RCMP went up beyond the landfill into lands where there's campers, made sure they were found and evacuated. There's so much more going on than most of us are aware of, certainly more than I'm aware of. And I just wanted to share that because, well, you sent me a get well card and a fruit basket. I want to say thank you. The papaya was delicious. My wife enjoyed the crunch and munch. And I just wanted to mention that because I know some people knew and other people didn't know. It was a bit scary, but everything turned out well. And but I'll tell you, it's a funny feeling to be in hospital and helpless in so many ways, and then watching a cloud, a mushroom cloud, rise above your neighborhood for the second time in less than a year. It was really something to have that feeling. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Olbrich. Does anyone else have a statement and or question for CAO Newell? I see Director Holmes.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly the past month has been kind of overwhelming with the number of EOC updates we've been receiving. In fact, we just got one now while Mr. Newell was speaking. So my question is how is the organization coping? It's really gone crazy. And Bill, you mentioned that people are kind of tapped out. Do we have sufficient resources to deal with everything that we're dealing with 39 staff being pulled in to work on the EOC? How is it impacting the rest of the organization? And I guess these are just kind of some of my concerns. And if you could comment on that, please.
Yeah, and I should just advise that we just did get a note that the evacuation order on the Brenda Creek fire, you recall, indicated 44 properties on order. So that's being reduced or downgraded to an alert for 41 of them. So good news on that front. They must be getting that transmission line protected and being able to move people back into the headwaters community. So good on that. As far as the organization, they continue to do an amazing job. We're better prepared now than we were over the past, if you recall, extended emergency operations centers in 17 and 18 for the floods. And then last year with the Christie Mountain wildfire, and the work that we've been doing with our member municipalities as far as straightening out what a regional emergency management program looks like, and the support that we've been getting from our member municipalities has been fantastic. I should also mention that on the Incommute fire, our Oliver landfill was actually in the order area, so we had to close that, and the town of Osoyoos volunteered to let those that required landfilling to use the Osoyoos landfill. So great cooperation all the way around, and yes, with the support we're getting from our members, we've been doing well.
Thank you, CAO Newell. Further questions? Not seeing any further questions. I'm going to motion to adjourn protective services. Director Bush and Director McCordoff. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Protective services is adjourned.
Great, thank you very much, Chair Roberts. We're going to go now to Environment and Infrastructure Committee, and I'll turn things over to Chair Gettens. Go ahead, please, Chair Gettens.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, and if I can get a motion to accept the agenda. Director Bush, second, Director Robertson. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you. We've got one item on the agenda, proposed energy program for information, and I will pass it over to the CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So I want to introduce Jeremy Dresner. He's our Senior Energy Specialist. And Jeremy comes to us on a 2-year grant, totally funded by Fortis BC. And amazing young man. He's spent most of his last couple of weeks in the EOC, but he is going to update us on sort of the climate action plan strategy that he's been working on for the regional district. Now, and I also want, and I know Jeremy will point this out too, this is also accessible to our member municipalities. When Fortis gave us the grant, they said this is for the whole regional district, and I know he's been liaising on a regular basis with member municipalities. So don't, for those out there, don't hesitate to ask questions about the member municipalities plan either. So we'll turn it over to Jeremy, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair and CEO. I'm going to plan to speak for about 15 minutes to the presentation, which should be coming up on the screen, and then have 15 minutes for questions as well. Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please, Danny? So yeah, as CEO has already explained, I'm funded through the Fortis BC's Climate Action Partners Programme, and there are around 20 climate action partners throughout the province in different organisations. RDKB and RDCO also have climate action partners, and the programme is designed to provide a dedicated resource to assist in promoting and delivering low carbon energy solutions. So that's me, and I've been here for around 6 months, and this is a summary of what I've been working on and what I'm planning to do next. Next slide, please. So the aims of the position are to support the development of policies and programs that move the district towards a low carbon energy future. And there's numerous primary objectives: BC Energy Step Code Implementation Strategy, Community Energy Retrofit Strategy, Corporate Climate Action Plan, Low Carbon Transportation, and identifying opportunities for renewable natural gas. Next slide, please. So yeah, we're going to go through each of these areas of work in turn, and I'm going to summarize what I've been working on and where I hope to go to next. So thank you. Next slide, please. So yeah, you may recall I first spoke to the board back in March to get approval for the notification to consult with the province to begin our step code consultations. That was approved. Since then, we've launched the Regional Connectors survey, which has been getting quite a lot of responses. I plan to ramp that up in September and make September Step Code Awareness Month, or Steptember, if you can bear the portmanteau. And we're going to have events across the region for builders and trades, and make sure that all builders and trades are aware of what Step Code is and how to get further training, and hoping to get a lot more responses on the survey to really guide where the board might want to go in terms of Step Code rollout. Another thing I've been doing, I applied for funding and was successful to get funding for a video. And next slide, please. That is, here's a still from the video there. This is a home that's being built in Narramatta, where they're aiming for very high level of Step Code. They're aiming for Step 5. So wanted to hear from the builder about how they're achieving that and the various techniques they're using, and understand from our building officers here about how they're doing it and why. So we've done some interviews, we've done some filming. The final piece of filming will be done in September when they've completed the last bit of the heating system. So that is to look forward to. Next slide, please. Renewable natural gas has been a real focus. It's the generation of renewable natural gas, which is gas generated from decomposing food and bio waste and green waste. Any organic matter can be upgraded into usable renewable natural gas. And so I've been looking at the business case for that. And there is a fixed price which Fortis have if you can produce renewable natural gas of $30 a gigajoule, which compared to what we currently pay for natural gas at $2.8 a gigajoule shows you the kind of incentive that is there to produce this. Needless to say, it would require a lot of changes in terms of the way that waste is collected, separated and sorted, but it is something I'm coordinating with the waste team in terms of how this fits in with the solid waste management plan. And just due to good fortune, the landfill currently has space, has a upgraded FortisBC pipeline heading through the site, and would be an excellent site if we were to look at a project like that. So there are definitely economic opportunities here. There is revenue available, and looking into the implications of that is something I've been working on, and talking to a lot of different RNG providers to really weed out who's able to actually deliver on these kind of big infrastructure projects. There are other opportunities potentially as well for hydrogen and biochar. Biochar in particular is interesting as it can reduce the amount of waste that's going to landfill. And hydrogen, well, in 2020, the federal government released their hydrogen strategy, and earlier, last month in July, the province released their hydrogen strategy. There's a lot of interest around hydrogen and what it can do to decarbonize. So I'm also investigating opportunities for that. We are co-producing with RDCO a report on the RNG supply quantities. So that is the amount of organic material which is available, but from residential, commercial, and agricultural waste, and looking at that as a opportunity for the potential for producing RNG. So just really defining what those quantities are. And that's a study that's already underway, and RDCO are heading that up. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I've already said, we're looking to provide a business case options for the Campbell Mountain landfill facility upgrade, highlighting what it would do to our carbon footprint as a region, and assessing some of the various technical solutions which different companies offer. So it's been a big focus of work so far on the RNG. Next slide, please. In my as the CAO said, I have a 2-year work plan, and in my first year, I've really focused on corporate initiatives, and in the second year, I plan to focus on more of the community side. So with the aim at the end of this year of producing a report on all our facilities and corporate inventory, and assessing the opportunities for upgrades. So far, I've got funding and completed 7 energy studies where engineers have come and looked at various sites, and also 2 investment grade studies are underway. So those are very detailed technical studies called custom studies by FortisBC. And those are on the wastewater treatment plant, Okanagan Falls, and the Oliver Recreation Center. And the total value of all of those studies is $140,000 plus. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I said, hope to complete the corporate climate action plan by the end of this year. I'm also looking at 101 Martin Street. This is a fairly old building, and currently I'm seeking funding for upgrades to the energy system and potentially building envelope 2. Again, it's very much at the planning stage, just seeing what these upgrades would cost and what benefits they would bring, and understanding the ROI there. But hope to be able to deliver a report on that fairly soon. We're also in November looking to launch a staff engagement, just really to raise awareness among staff about energy saving and about what they can do. And I've got funding for that through the Energy Wise Network, which is co-funded by BC Hydro and Fortis. And because it was already in the strategic planning and budget for the previous year, there's some upgrades to the Karamius Rec Centre. I'm helping Andy Foster out with the install of lighting and reviewing various energy upgrade measures there. Next slide, please. So onto electric vehicles. We have our own fleet of vehicles, which I'm focusing on. There's money available from Plug-in BC to do a total fleet review. I've also spoken to colleagues in Summerland, Penticton, and Oliver. And what I'm hoping for is a consistent format for review of the fleet. And that will really help inform investment decisions as we look to upgrade and evolve the fleet and make sure that we're using the right tools for the job in terms of vehicle sizing. And that's what that review will produce. On EV usage, I'm co-producing a video with Kelowna and RDCO, which is really focusing on electric vehicles as something that's more attainable and accessible for all members of the community. And I also recently attended an event in Summerland, which was working to promote some of the electric vehicle charging points up there. And I did want to note here that the federal government has now set 2035 as the deadline for non-EV vehicle sales. And that may come as news to some of the directors here. We have to plan for that. We have to plan for our fleet up to and beyond 2035. That is getting to within the range of our current sort of replacement cycles of new vehicles. And if we have electric vehicles in our fleet, they need to be charged. So we need to plan for that as well. So looking at our current buildings, looking at their electrical distribution capacity and the availability of parking spaces for this type of thing. But yeah, 2035 is a deadline that's been set by the federal government for sales of those kind of vehicles. So yeah, reviewing corporate charging locations, and as I said, I'd like to get into looking at community electric vehicle charging locations on a regional basis next year as well. Next slide, please. Street lighting is another thing that is in my work plan. There are a number of different street lighting services, and there are definitely economies of scale in approaching this in a wholesome way together. That is difficult with different service areas, and but on a technical point of view, there are a few solutions which have been identified as the suitable streetlights for that would work well in this region. I know Penticton have done a large streetlight replacement program, as has Summerland and as has Kelowna. And if you go to the next slide, please. That is a very large check for $89,000 being passed to the District of Summerland from FortisBC as an incentive to upgrade the streetlights. And this is a large part of my job, is really understanding where these incentives are, how to access them, and accessing them. So there is money available for LED street lighting replacements. It's currently available. I don't know if it will be available in future years, because the business case for LEDs is already very good. So I want to make sure that we take advantage of external money while it's available. And I hope to be able to present to you a full proposal for LEDs in November for streetlights. Next slide, please. Yeah, so community energy initiatives. I'm increasing the awareness of FortisBC incentives for both the residential and commercial sectors. A lot of this is to come. I hope to be able to provide some further information on our website about what's out there for homeowners and for commercial organizations. I had a conversation earlier this morning with an organization called Green Step that's been doing work across the Okanagan, and they are a funnel for commercial incentives in the region, and they're able to provide resources for small businesses. So we'll be adding all of this information to a website resource for anyone in the region to help access existing resources for conservation and energy management. I would like to work on a neighborhood energy scheme. This is an idea that I'm very happy to get feedback on, but the basic idea is that houses are built in a similar place, often at a similar time, and therefore have similar building standards and similar issues. They might all run into a need for insulation at the same time, or replacement of heat pumps, or upgrade to heat pumps at the same time, or solar. So there's economies of scale if we can organize it. It's an organizational problem if we can get neighborhoods to sign up and coordinate that their aim is, as for example, say 10 houses all want to do this at the same time. We should be able to provide resources to help facilitate that. Clean BC already provides some additional funding if multiple homes want to do heat pumps at the same time, and we should be directing homeowners to these resources if that's what they want to do as a neighborhood. That community energy plan will be, as I said, next year's project for the end of 2022. Next slide, please. Just very briefly, there are multiple benefits of climate action beyond reducing GHGs and saving money. You know, for example, the trees that were planted on the north side of this building, 101 Martin Street, provide shading. They make it a cooler place in terms of the heat losses, and a more enjoyable place to spend time. And that's just an example of trees. They're an excellent climate solution, well deployed. They can help, and health and air quality are also benefited. Next slide, please. So this is our regional climate projections. And honestly, when I put together this presentation, I didn't know I'd be speaking after the previous presentation from the CAO on the impacts that we're currently facing. But this is our own report from February 2020 that just explains the greater likelihood of wildfires, water shortages, and the consequences that we'll be having on ecosystems, community, and the economy. Next slide, please. I could have pretty much picked any news story recently, but I just wanted to highlight this one that says this is not normal wildfires, and this is not a scale that we've seen before. And the indications are that we will expect far more of this in the following years. We have the ability to act. I've been very happy to be part of the EOC and work on some of this in the last few weeks. It's been new for me and eye-opening. But I really, after the previous presentation, I really don't need to emphasize the importance of the work that I'm doing, and I hope you'll appreciate the focus on some very defined climate actions that we might be able to take in the region, both on a corporate and community level. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this. This is from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in the province, and this is a table where they've assessed various climate risks, and sure enough, wildfire, seasonal water shortages, and heat waves are high likelihood and high consequence. With that, I will ask if there are any questions. Next slide, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a look over at the board, see if there's any questions. Thank you. Director Obrecht, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Jeremy, for that very interesting presentation. I don't know that I've ever met you, but I'm the director for OK Falls. And I'm assuming you might have already met Gail Scott working out there in the Economic Development Office. Yes. We're not a municipality, which I'm sure you also know, and we've fallen far behind the 6 municipalities in the regional district, Okanagan-Similkameen. We're envious of Karameas and Princeton and Oliver, Osoyoos and Summerland, and of course Penticton for the great job they all do. We don't have, for example, good electric vehicle charging infrastructure. If you look at Summerland, and I don't know if they're up to 26 now, and all the support they've had with grants, you look at Princeton, Karameos, you know, it's something that we care about, and I'm hopeful, and my question is that you will be giving some specific attention to OK Falls in the work you do, and maybe even specific to what's available to help us do better in that area. I know Minister Beers, who was formerly tourism minister, now citizen services. This is a big item for the provincial government. I know federal government. Tourism Minister Melanie Joly was here in May of 2019 and spoke to the importance of this kind of infrastructure for tourism and for community development. And yet in OK Falls, we just seem to have been missing out for a lot of years. So that's my question. Can you speak to anything specific for Area D, OK Falls, with the work that you're doing and specific to the electric vehicle charging infrastructure that we'd sure like to see come to our community?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chair. I cannot speak directly to Area D. I think for everything you said, Director, I agree with in terms of the knock-on benefits of electric vehicles and the importance of getting ahead of it. I would like to highlight that it is an infrastructure issue in terms of the amount of available electricity from various buildings. So with that in mind, the Plug-in BC funding that I mentioned we can apply for additional funding, which can do reviews of the electrical infrastructure to make sure that these charges are being sited in such a way as to not draw more power or require substantial digging up of the road and additional infrastructure work. It is more of a general comment. It is about sizing the right type of charger to the community as is needed. There are level 3 super fast chargers and there are level 2 chargers that charge more slowly. And it's a conversation I'm happy to continue with in terms of exactly what the community needs and where it would like it to be sited. But I'm happy to feed into that conversation, absolutely, and assist with that. But some of that is going to have to come from the community to define its own needs in that regard as well.
Great, thank you. Director Knodel, please.
Thank you, and through the chair. I'm just wondering if there's any private use photovoltaics programs. The rural area could benefit greatly, and there's a lot of older homes that are taking a real shellacking with the increased prices on electrical energy. So photovoltaic seems to be coming into its own slowly, but coming forward and getting better. It'd be nice to see a grant program to lower the initial cost for those to some of the rural areas, if you would, please.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's no current grant in BC for photovoltaics. Clean BC are able to offer funding for community projects, which can include photovoltaics at times. But there's no direct funding available for that. Fortis BC, who are in this area, offer a net metering program, which is of benefit in the way that the photovoltaics are used, but in terms of the capital costs, there's nothing currently.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, you got a follow-up, Director Knodel, please go ahead.
Yeah, on that, one of the other things that I have recently sat in on the BC Hydro energy program, and I was a little surprised to hear that they have no plan to take advantage of gas turbine for peak use loads, and that some of the projects that they're looking at taking on would have a lot of cost attached to them that I don't see as necessary. Batteries being one that they talked about quite favorably. Some of the new gas turbines, the GT84, for instance, has no NOx gases attached to it. So I'm just wondering why this has been set to the side, and would that be something that'd be eligible for your program?
Thank you. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry, can I seek clarification, Director? Are we talking about small-scale residential gas turbines or large-scale grid-scale gas turbines?
You said this was a community-based unit. A GT24 gas turbine is a 350 megawatt output gas turbine. Probably the best known one in BC is at Campbell River right now. I was more concerned with the peak load because they're easily throttled. You can throttle them up and down quickly, similar to a dam. There's going to be some cost loading, so I'm just wondering if that fits in anywhere, or is that another division altogether of this discussion?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's gas turbines are not something that I've looked at specifically. The reason being that is new fossil fuel infrastructure effectively, and under my climate action partner mandate, it's not something I'm particularly looking at. I would highlight that a gas turbine is going to be subject to carbon price, which is set by the federal government. The raw commodity of gas is already overtaken by the additional carbon taxes, and that's at the current price of less than $50 a ton. It's going to be heading up to $170 a ton. So there is while it might have lower capital costs than a battery, the operational expenditure, just from what we know about with the carbon tax increase, is going to have implications longer term for the residents or anyone paying for that kind of infrastructure. So I would highlight that. I can't speak to why not BC Hydro might be including it in their plans.
Thank you. I'll go over to you, Director Holmes.
Yes, thank you. In the ministerial mandate letters that were given to the Minister of Environment and Minister of Municipal Affairs, I believe, it included to prepare an enabling legislation to allow PACE financing, and that's something in Summerland that we're talking, and in anticipation of that legislation coming through, we'll be talking to the credit union in Summerland to get a program going. And I'm just wondering, that might be something of interest for the whole region, and if that would be something you'd be looking at as well.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Director, and thank you for the question. Yeah, I have been looking at the opportunities for PACE financing. It is something that I think can really benefit the region in terms of accessing capital for energy upgrade projects, and I'd be happy to understand what Summerland have already done on that front. Needless to say, we're going to have partners from banks and credit unions who are willing to be partners on this. So if there's already been headway made with Summerland, I'd be interested to speak more on that and see if there's wider regional implications that could be applied for that kind of funding.
Great. Thank you. We're just gone a little bit over time, and I don't see any other questions. So if there's no further business, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. Interesting. I think there's a lot more discussion to have, so looking forward to that for sure. And if I can get a motion to adjourn the committee meeting, please. Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Pendergraft. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. Over to you, Chair Kazakovich.
Great, thank you very much, Chair Gettens. So directors, we have a 5-minute break and we will be starting the board meeting at 11:15. So see you back here shortly. Okay, directors, still morning, good morning. We're going to get started with the regular board meeting. Once again, I'd like to welcome alternate director Sherry Philpott Dickery, who's filling in for Director Bauer today. Welcome, Sherry. Great to have you here. Directors, have a look at your agendas, please. There's going to be one addition to the agenda, and that's going to be E1, ratification of SOLs. We saw that last meeting. We need to do it again. So that will come up at E1 under CIO report. That's the only change to the agenda. I'm looking for, reminder, this is your only opportunity to remove an item from consent agenda. Director Gittins, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask for the community services meeting, community services minutes from last board meeting to be removed from the consent agenda, please?
Is that 1E?
I thought it was item F.
F is corporate services.
Yeah, corporate services, please.
Oh, so remove corporate services committee meeting. Okay, so 1F.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, my apologies. Thank you.
Okay, 1F is being removed, and that will move down to D4. So we'll move 1F to D4. Yes, okay, thank you. Anybody else with an item to remove from consent agenda? Okay, and Director Gittins, that's just a leftover hand? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm therefore looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Director Gittins, seconded by Director Bob Coyne. Call the question, all in favor? Thank you, hands can come down. Anybody opposed? That motion carries, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda corporate issues as amended. Director Knobel's moving that, seconded by Director Roberts. Call the question, all in favor? Thank you, hand can come down. Anybody opposed? That motion carries. Okay, so folks, that takes us down to B, Development Services, Rural Land Use Matters. We'll go to B1, Parkland Dedication Proposal, Electoral Area D, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. This is the condos at the bottom of Waterman Hill in Okanagan Falls. And the board may recall that we approved a rezoning a while ago on the first floor units that currently houses the regional library, and the rest were vacant. So approval to go ahead and turn those into residential. And then this now is an application to the ministry for subdivision of that those units on the ground floor along Highway 97. Typically, when there's an application for a subdivision of more than 2 units or 2 lots, that brings into play the requirement for public use land dedication or funding in lieu of. So in this case, the applicant has requested that parkland dedication 5% equivalent fee be waived, and we're recommending that be denied, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to Director Oberg.
Yes, and thank you to the chair. I have a lot of awareness on the broader issue of parkland dedication and our policy. I'm also very familiar with this particular project. It's an excellent project. The board has previously done the zoning change, which I support, and it's a good change for residential housing, which is very, very needed. I want to make a motion consistent, the same motion as the administration recommendation. I cannot support the request that this requirement under the law be waived, and I ask the board to support me in this. And it's important to the community that we have these laws followed they exist for a reason, a good reason in this case. And I appreciate the work done by staff and make the administrative recommendation as a motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Gittins is seconding the motion. Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor that the request to waive the parkland dedication requirement be denied. So being that that's a negative motion, I'm going to ask if the applicant or agent is on the line and wishes to speak to this. So I'll just go to Danny. Do you have anybody on the line that's requesting to speak? And they would need to do, would it be *3? Okay.
Yes, there is someone to speak.
There is someone to speak, okay. And is that Braden?
Braden, correct.
Okay, I see that we have Braden Kononov on the line to speak. Braden, are you there?
Yes. So I'm actually here with the owner as well. So I'm the property manager and I have the owner with me as well. So myself and owner are both here to answer any questions and provide a little bit extra context.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi there. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak. I think we've had a few discussions about this, and I think I'll just add a bit of flavor, if I can, to the dialogue that's already happened here. We agree that this is an important housing project in Okanagan Falls. We are not selling these units. We're retaining them long-term as rentals. That's been our plan from the get-go. As we started this project, we're working with a former planner at RDOS, Rushi, who's no longer with the RDOS. And through our extensive conversations and communication back and forth, despite all efforts on our part to identify all costs, this was not something that was ever discussed or presented to us until the final documentation came through with this being a condition. It's also something we've had conversations with one of the local appraisers who has completed an appraisal on the property for us so that we can obtain financing. And their position has been, or maybe it's a bit of an awkward response, but they weren't sure how to even do an appraisal on a land value basis for a condo, and reference the fact that, yes, while land titles is starting to value land and buildings or land and improvements separately, this is not comprehensive, and they just aren't even confident or sure how they would appropriately value the land. How do I even put this? The concrete shell within a condo building that has no finishings. And so that's just where, we're kind of stuck on this and have requested this waiver as a result of these facts and the reality that this does put our project in an awkward situation around its viability, given the potential considerable costs that we will need to bear as a result. So just a bit of context there. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Directors, any questions specifically for the applicant? Yes, Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, when the initial structure happened, at that point, was there not parkland dedication as part of the rezoning and the subdivision for all those condos at that time?
So that question is going to the applicant. So I'm not sure if they would know that, but Brayden, do you know if that occurred?
So I can speak to part of this, perhaps. The building was originally constructed in 2004, and to the best of my knowledge, this bylaw did not exist at that point in time. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But that is my understanding, is that this came into place after the building was originally developed in 2004.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if we have anyone staff-wise who would be able to answer that, CAO?
We should just do delegate.
Okay, we can come to that later. Thank you. Okay, Director Monteith, did you have a follow-up, or is that a leftover hand? Leftover hand? Okay, thank you. Sorry, did Director Obert, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. And for the benefit of Director Monteith and others, the law regarding parkland dedication is a common law across Canada in many provinces, many jurisdictions, indeed in BC, even in 2004 when this property was first built, and the process that would have been followed then would have been specific to that application at that time. The law today that applies to this matter is also law that applies to this matter, and it's not relevant what happened historically in Vancouver or on this project or in Caledon. The opportunity for this board, the board has the jurisdiction, indeed the authority. It can waive that requirement. It costs nothing to ask for the waiver, but it is not in the community interest, indeed, not even in the interest of the applicant. Anytime you have a subdivision or indeed even a zoning change can change densification, which impacts your parkland community amenity. And the reason the law exists is to recognize that change and to put into place a source of funds for capital projects that are important. You can go to Vancouver and look at the parks. You can go Lower Mainland. I mean, there's a reason the parks are as good as they are. And this is one of the reasons this project benefits from compliance with that law. It doesn't get hurt by it. As far as appraisers go, I've been to court with appraisers, and I've gone to litigation, and I know opinions are bought and paid for, and they agree sometimes with their client, but there is a way that appraisals can be done, and this law can be complied with, and I know it's done all the time. So it's possible for compliance to occur. It's a process, and the question is interesting, but it's not relevant to this particular matter. And I hope that helps Director Monteith, because great question, just not relevant to how it applies here. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And so just a reminder, directors, right now we're just at the stage of asking questions of the applicant who's on the phone, and then we'll get to the debate and any questions of staff. So are there further questions for the applicant while they're on the line? I'm just checking to see if there's any hands up here from the board of directors. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so thank you, Brayden. Now we're going to go to the board of directors for further debate and discussion and or questions of staff. Directors, any questions or comments on this one? Look.
Well, did you want Mr. Garish to respond on whether the public use land dedication has already been applied?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Mr. Garish, did you hear that?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Could you please give us some information on that?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have details in relation to the existing building and what may have been required at the time of subdivision in 2004. However, further to what Director Oberg was saying, the parkland dedication requirements are a local government act requirement. It's not one of our bylaws. As far as I'm aware, the requirements that exist today would have existed in 2004. So I'm inclined to think that the development would have had to provide parkland dedication at that time. However, in this instance, because the applicant has rezoned the property to increase density and is now seeking to increase density through the subdivision application, they have triggered the requirements of the Act again for additional parkland dedication.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Okay, directors, there is a motion on the floor to deny the request to waive the parkland dedication requirement, and that is a rural vote only. So I will call the question now then. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And is there anybody opposed? I'm not seeing anybody opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. We'll go down to B2. Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch Referral Electoral Area D Cannabis Retail Store, CAO.
So there has been an application to the LCRB for a third cannabis retail outlet in Okanagan Falls. And our current practice on that, Madam Chair, has been that if it is zoned appropriately and it is a retail use that fits into the current zone, then we would not enter that market to determine competition, that a retail store is a retail store. So with two already in Okanagan Falls, that then would indicate that the product is already available, but that should be the market that determines whether we allow more or not, and whether it would be viable to have more. So we have recommended that we support the application, and then we have identified our comments that we would submit in support of that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to Director Olbrich on the first recommendation, please.
When you say first recommendation, are you suggesting A on the list of recommendations?
No, the first recommendation is that the public hearing report be received.
Accordance. I'm so sorry. I'm not following you.
Recommendation number 4.
I don't appear to have. Do you have a page number? Because I'm clearly looking at the wrong thing.
Oh, so I think because you need, it would be in your agenda. First, we just need to, Director Olbrich, we just need to receive your public hearing report.
Right. I'm looking at the agenda. I'm at page 82. But what page are you at?
I'm just looking at my agenda.
The agenda's on a different page. One moment while I find that page. The agenda is on page 43. So I'll flip back to 43.
It's recommendation number 4 on page 3 of the main agenda.
We're on page 45 of the PDF document.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 45 now. And yeah, I didn't see that in the agenda materials, but I certainly see it on the agenda itself on page 45. Recommendation, I will make that motion. Thank you very much for your help.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Gettens is seconding. Okay, so we're just dealing right now with the motion that the public hearing report be received, which is a corporate vote. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So now we'll go to recommendation number 5, the main motion, and I'll go to Director Olbrich on that.
Right, thank you. And I'm now having difficulty with my computer engine not taking me back to the page I was on, 82, I think it was, yes, 82. I cannot support the administrative recommendation. I will be making the alternate motion. When I look at the administrative recommendation, I won't spend too much time being specific, but for example, under item B, it says no significant negative impact on the community is anticipated. That is not the community feedback at all. That is where that comes from, I'm not sure. But the negative impact on the community is magnificent. I think we have on this agenda package of 150 pages, 34 pages are on this one matter. That's 22.6% of the total pages and a significantly larger part of our total agenda. There's a lot of feedback there. I'm trusting all the board members have read it, but if you've read it and if you've attended the public meetings, which I have, and been to the APC meetings, which I have, and listened to community members, which I have, the negative impact here is significant. We do have a motion before this board for review of our retail cannabis bylaw. The current bylaw is not serving our community well. This is coming up in the 2022 business cycle. I appreciate these things take time at the regional district. I understand that process takes a long time, and that process has begun. If we look at the APC recommendation on page 3 of the administrative report recommends that we table this until the RDOS has the advantage of looking at what's being done in our neighboring communities, and that criteria be brought to public hearing, get input, so final decision can be made, criteria be brought back to the APC, and the APC make final decision. I don't think we've had that happen yet. Indeed, we haven't. But when we look at Summerland, we look at Penticton, we look at Oliver, each of those communities have their own rules. When we take those rules that are in Penticton, distances and limits, we would want to look at what Penticton's doing. I think Penticton is doing a good job in this area, and we can learn from Penticton. When we look at the impact, there could be negative impact on jobs, negative impact on community development, negative impact on image, and one of the letters, and if you review them, it closes with, anyways, thank you for listening to my concerns. I realize everyone needs to make a living, but I do ask that as our overseers, referring to all of us on this board, we're in a role of oversight. To our overseers, so to speak, you will closely think about the quality of life of those who are committed to living in OK Falls and the ongoing unlawful issues we already have to suffer due to a certain sector in the neighborhood. When we're dealing with the balancing of considerations, which is part of our job in oversight, when we're looking at the provincial authority here, they're looking at us to do this work. And if we push this to them, they're going to approve it. So this buck stops here. This work has to be done by this board. It's hard work. It's hard work to listen. It's hard work to find that balance. We've got a motion before this board to take the experience we've had since October 17, 2018, when our federal government legalized retail cannabis. And we're not against the law. We're not against business. We're in fact very pro-business in the community. But this is about balance. This is about planning. This is about the proper function of land use and that perspective. And this job needs to be done. I can't support this application. If you read through the materials, there's lots of reasons why. I could speak on this for an hour or two, and I don't think there's anybody at this board table who wants to hear me talk longer. So I'm going to say thank you for listening. And I hope one of you will support me with a second to my motion, and I hope the board will support me in my motion. Thank you.
Director Ober, could I get clarification on your motion? Is it the alternative in the report?
I would make the alternative motion, and I would be open to postponing this for a period of time so we can get the review done on our bylaw and have a little sharper focus going forward. But I think the alternative motion is the best one. This applicant and others can reapply in the future when the law is reviewed. But I have serious concerns with this application. I've talked to staff, I've talked to community.
Director Ober, could I
Yes.
interject? We need to get a motion on the floor, please, before we keep discussing it. So
Sure.
Director Roberts, are you seconding the motion? Yes, okay, great. We have a motion on the floor now. That's the alternative in your package, which is the regional district object to the application. Now I'm going to ask for comments or questions from the board, please. Director Bob Coyne, go ahead.
So I have to disagree with Director Ulrich. This is a free marketplace decision, and the market will sort itself out in time. And I don't believe it's the board's place to be interfering in free enterprise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Monteith, go ahead.
To the chair, I do support Director Oberg on this. The liquor board has rules on location and how close liquor sales can be. I think that we need to look at something very similar for the sale of legal marijuana. I feel that we are opening a big can of worms by allowing a free market to appear. Even though it's legal, people still don't want to have 10, 3, or 2 in the very tight area of a community. And I think that allowing them to continue and allowing the free market to play out is not a safe way to protect our communities. So I support Director Oberg.
Thank you. Director Spencer Coyne.
Yeah, there are rules set out by the province. There's a lot of hoops that need to be jumped through before they even get to this point. I cannot support Director Oberg's motion. We are not here to stop business from happening. I will vote against him.
Okay, thank you. Director Oberg, go ahead.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I certainly respect and appreciate both Director Coyne's comments. And just want to add that not only do I not agree with you, but this is real important in OK Falls. This really matters. And the rule, and I love rules, I love process, I care that it's fair, and I appreciate the role of this board, which sits in oversight. We have a duty, we have an obligation to listen, to pay attention, and in this mechanism, it's our job to listen to this feedback and balance and tweak those considerations. Unfortunately, that is the law, that is our obligation, that is our duty, and when the law isn't working, as it's not working, it's also our duty to take action. Take action. Staff can't do it. We do it. We take action. I've made the motion. This is going to be reviewed by staff. We're going to get recommendations. I'm satisfied when we look at the community, what's happening in Penticton, what's happening in Oliver, what's happening in other communities in BC and in our regional district. We're going to learn that it's possible for us to tweak our bylaw and get that balance. Never perfect. I don't think we'll ever be perfect, but better than it is today. The Goldilocks zone, the sweet spot. We are very pro-free market. We are very pro-business. We are very pro-jobs. If you read the letters of concern from both business and residents, they are not against the free market. They are not against law. They are not against fairness, but they care about their community. They care a lot. And this is why I can't support this. Now, I appreciate you don't support me, and I heard you, but I want you to know that this is real important to us. And I'd ask you both to reconsider before your final vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Director McCordoff now, please.
Thank you very much. Interesting discussion. We had exactly the same discussion at a city's town council a few years back when we had several people apply to open up cannabis shops in town. There are very strategic rules that have to be followed by the provincial government first. And we allowed anybody who wanted to, free enterprise, to go through that process and decide whether they wanted to continue with it. As it turned out, I think we found a balance. Some of the people who did apply chose not to continue in town already, and that it wasn't probably a very good marketing ploy for them to continue and perhaps have to close. So I do think that it's certainly important to allow this to happen, and I would be voting against Director Obrick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is a recommendation to deny or to not provide support for the application. I understand that the applicant or the applicant's agent is on the line, so I just want to give that individual an opportunity to speak, please. So Danny, do we have the folks to, is that Vanita?
Yes.
Okay, Vanita, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, if you had any comments you'd like to provide, please go ahead now.
So I actually have my client on the line as well. Her name is Diane. If someone can unmute her, she'd like to speak.
Okay, great.
Hi everyone.
Doing that now.
Here. Yes, I spoke at the last two meetings that we had for reviewing this application. In those responses, I indicated that we had done our due diligence when we purchased this building in Okanagan Falls. There were no cannabis stores at the time. We were hit with a pandemic, which delayed things incredibly. We spent a lot of money on this building, the sole intention of opening an elevated cannabis retail location. You know, the complaints that you have against it, you're speaking about, you know, the black market. It's the black market that we're trying to prevent by having legal stores. You have to have competition as well. You know, there's a complaint from one of the existing cannabis store owners. I understand her plight, but there has to be fair competition as well. You don't have one gas station. You don't have one grocery store. There has to be fair competition. We've put a lot of time, money, and energy into this. You know, we did our part, and I think your laws, they're not set up to prevent this application. If you want to prevent further stores, then that's where you take action. You can't do it now with us. I don't feel that you can do that. That's really all I have to say. I hope that you approve our application.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Diane. Directors, this is your opportunity to ask questions of the applicant. So I'm asking you to speak now only if you have a question for the applicant. If you want to debate, we're going to come to that later. So Director Ghgs, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just to Diane, please, can you just give me a bit of background on your company? It started, I think, in Ontario a few years ago, and then, but is everybody who owns the company based in Ontario, or will any of the owners be moving out this way? I'm just curious.
So it's my partner, Sherry McDonald, and myself that own the company. It's something that we started after selling a very successful full-service security company that we owned and operated for 23 years. We sold that in January 2018. We retired for about 10 minutes and figured that we were too young to be retired, and the cannabis market was hopping at the time. So this is where we jumped in with both feet. Sherry has quite an extensive retail background. We have 3 stores open in Ontario. Ontario was very delayed, which is why we purchased buildings in Alberta and 2 in BC. We also have a building in Summerland. We have a building in Sundre, Alberta. So one of us will be moving out there. I can't say that it'll be forever, but it'll be temporary to set the stores up, hire local individuals to manage and operate the day-to-day operations, but we will certainly always be have our hand in the pie, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Director Knodel, question for the applicant?
I'm just, well, actually, I'm going to withdraw my question for later. I'll make it as a comment. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Anybody else with a question for the applicant while they're on the line? Director Obrick, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you to the chair. I'm curious, when you chose OK Falls, you could have chosen Penticton or Oliver or Soyuz. Why didn't you choose those other communities?
They already had several stores, several cannabis stores. Summerland has several cannabis stores, but we chose a location there that would do well. Okanagan Falls had no stores at the time that we visited and purchased the building. You know, we're not afraid of competition. There has to be fair competition, as I already said. I think it's a unique location. It's a unique building. And if this application doesn't go through, this building is going to be sitting there vacant and derelict. Is that what the folks in Okanagan Falls want?
Okay, thank you. I see a question for the applicant from Director Spencer Coyne. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. How many jobs are you going to create through this store? And have you, other than buying the building, has there been a significant financial input into this project so far?
Yeah, well, we're unable to get there to even start the renovations. But yes, we've done all of the planning, all of the blueprints, you know, from the renovation to the security system to setting up with where we buy the cannabis. It's, you know, it's, I don't know if you've seen the floor plan or the layout that we have in mind. It's a huge, huge building. It's 6,000 square feet. And so our plan is to have an actual cannabis store and what we call a modern market that will be cannabis accessories. It'll be merchandise. It'll be other things that we would sell other than cannabis on one side of the store. So, you know, you're looking at 2 managers. There's 2 stores, so there's 2 managers, and then however many sales clerks that we would require, security people. It's gonna be a significant spend on our end.
Okay, thank you. Directors, anybody else with a question specifically for the applicant? Director Johansson, did I see your hand up?
No, sorry, Chair. I did have a comment when the board discusses the matter.
Okay, thank you. Anybody with a question for the applicant? I think Director Obrick again. Go ahead, please.
Yes, and thank you. I heard the applicant speak to when they purchased the building, they weren't aware, the other 2 stores weren't yet open. But I do have a question on when that was. In our community, these stores, you know, we have public process. They were before the APC, before this board. There's no secret that these stores were in motion quite a long time ago, and the community spoke to it at the APC and other public opportunities. I wonder, my question is, when did they purchase? 2 questions. When did they purchase? And then secondly, certainly they became aware of these other stores at some point in time. And how did that impact their decision to go forward? They clearly knew, I mean, staff and RDOS knew, many people knew. They clearly knew at some point in time. So when did they purchase, and then when did they become aware? And the third question, how did that impact their decision? Thank you. 3 questions.
Go ahead, please, Diane.
Yeah, we purchased in the fall of 2019. Before we purchased, we contacted the planning department to ask if there were any current applications, if there were any current stores. The answer at that time was no, there wasn't. So here we are, pandemic later, we haven't been able to get there to do the renovations, and there's nothing we can do about that. When did we learn about the other stores? During one of the council meetings that you had to discuss this application. That's when we learned that there were 2 other stores.
Okay, thank you. And directors, I'll ask again if anybody else has a question specific to the applicant. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up. So thank you, Diane. We're going to move on to discussion amongst the board and questions and debate. So I've got Director Knodel, then Director Johansson. Go ahead, Director Knodel.
I'm just a little concerned that we're stepping into allowing the provincial government to download on us, and the eventual outcome of that becomes a hodgepodge of rules across an area, different towns, different rural areas, and all of a sudden we've got something that differs from the direction that the planning department's been trying to go in for some time now. We'll have every area will have a different set of rules. Every regional district will, every town will. It's going to become a little bit of a mess, I think. Not only that, we give the province credence to downloading more to us, and I'm a little troubled by that at this point. I'm still open to see which way this goes, but it does trouble me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Johansson, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that Oliver has embraced the free market approach, similar to what Asuyas has done. It's been, I guess, about 3-4 years now, and everything seems to be working fine. I think the market is regulating itself, and we've had no issues that I can report to the board following that approach. And I would be not in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Holmes, then Oberick. Go ahead, please, Director Holmes.
So I certainly support a review of the bylaw. We discussed that last week at our last meeting, rather. And and maybe what comes out of that is that we end up with different rules in different communities to respect different community values. But what we have now, I don't really agree that we should be moving the goalposts, partway through, and that seems to me is what we're doing. That this motion would be doing, and I don't think that's really fair. So I can't support the motion.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Director Oberick, then Director Trainer. Go ahead, Director Oberick.
Yes, and thank you very much. And just to Director Knodel's comment, the legislation which has existed now since 2018, it's not downloading. The local authorities have the authority, and they are different already. Penticton is different than Asuyas already. Indeed, we're looking at the Penticton policy, which we quite are impressed by, and I think has some good balance in it. The whole country of Canada has, and I think the province and the federal governments have quite correctly left the authority and the discretion to local government to do their own planning use and balance considerations, which I agree with. To Director Johansson's comment, we completely agree with free market approach. That really isn't the issue here, and we agree with that. I have a question. I don't know if staff can help answer it, but I'd like to know when the first cannabis store opened in OK Falls. When my recollection is 2019 is when that was done. that application came to the APC. And I could be wrong on the year. I'd like some clarification. And I can't imagine staff gave this applicant incorrect information. That doesn't sit well with my ear. Maybe the applicant didn't hear the answer to the questions, but I know from in the community, it was well known in the community. If you're not in the community, you may not know what's going on, but I know it was well known in the community, and I suspect it was well known by staff. And so my question for staff, when was that first application received? Do you have a date?
Mr. Garish, do you have that information?
I am quickly clicking through our system here. I can tell from the file number that we received it in 2019, and it was considered by the board at a November meeting of 2019. But in terms of when we received the referral, yeah, sorry, I would need more time to track that down, but I would say, just based on the processing times here, probably mid to late summer of 2019 would have been the first time we received a referral for a cannabis retail store in OK Falls.
Thank you very much, and that's my recollection as well. And indeed, I know staff well on these applications because they come to the APC and they speak to it. I cannot imagine that staff deliberately misled this applicant ever. If there was a misunderstanding, that's a different issue. But the suggestion that the applicant did not receive accurate information and didn't know until this first came before the board, I find that hard to believe. It's a small issue, but it does speak to a bigger concern. And in the community, we have a lot of work to do on this issue. We'll do it properly. But it's important to us. It's important to us that we review the law and tweak it, looking always for perfect, knowing we'll never get there, but we can do better. And when we look at, we've heard the applicants say they weren't interested in Penticton for a reason. When we look at the numbers in the business case, OK Falls falls far short of Penticton on the business case, on the numbers. If the reasoning holds, Penticton's a better choice for this location. So this is going to be, it's going to have an impact on our community development. And there's a lot of people who have been expressing concern for a lot of years in our community. We don't have to be the same as Penticton or Oliver or Tulameen. We should be allowed, like Penticton, to have our own rules for our own community development. And of course, that's the future. We'll get there. But in the short term, I thank you for the answer to staff and the information. I find it interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from some other directors, and then I'm going to call the question. I've got Director Trainer next, then Roberts. Go ahead, Director Trainer.
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this one. I really respect what Director Obrick has been saying, and I appreciate that he understands his community best and what the people want there. In Summerland, we've also taken a free market approach, and I believe we currently have 2 stores that are open and operating, and we've got 2 more that we approved as well. And you know, at the very beginning, when cannabis was first approved, I had the same concerns that Director Obrick has expressed, but I don't really anymore. And to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had any negative impacts from the 2 stores that we currently have open. They're both really good business owners, and they run really good businesses. And I kind of look at it like, you know, we've got tons of wineries in Summerland, and we've got cideries, and we've got, you know, microbreweries opening. And so I kind of look at it that way as well. And so I guess my comment is just, I had the same concerns at the beginning, but now I feel that, you know, the free market kind of decides, and the people of Summerland ultimately decide whether they're going to shop in those stores and support them. And so, like I said, I'm just going to listen to the rest of this discussion, and I am torn because I respect what Obrick's saying, but I also know that now that we've been through this in Summerland, that a lot of the fears that people have aren't necessarily, haven't turned out that way. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. I got a couple of questions. I guess the first question being, I kind of got a veiled understanding from the owner that, again, that there was no way that we could deny it as per the law. Well, it's just saying that, and whether or not that puts us in a tenuous legal position is question one. Two, again, I guess maybe it's more of a statement than a question. I get that, and I support free market as well. But again, my concern is regards to the voice of the people, the individuals. And again, when we look at Summerland with 2 stores, as Director Trainer was stating on, we have OK Falls that's far less population, which already has 2. So, and again, looking at the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, a lot of times when we look at the issues around where we had liquor licenses, et cetera, I'm looking forward to the debate coming forward. I'm fearful of making a choice or a decision that all of a sudden affects already established businesses, et cetera. And it is a balance. It is a balance act. And sometimes it's challenging, and to be able to say we're just going to let everybody duke it out. But in the meantime, there will be casualties. And sometimes we have a choice to make where we can hopefully mitigate any damage to those that are already in a particular industry. And again, I know it's a delicate place to be, and I do understand the free market. But at the same time, I also want to look after in regards to people that live there and what they believe and what has been set forward from the APC and the many citizens that have come forward. But let's go back to question number 1, whether or not, and I guess this would be the CAO legal standing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. CAO, are you able to speak to that?
Well, anybody can sue anybody, but as far as our opinion on this, the LCRB is the approval authority, but they require the local government to indicate either support or objection, and that they won't issue a license without the support of the local government. So that added to our discussion.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to add to the discussion, I support retail. If it's legal, it's legal, it's retail. I want to see competition. That's just my perspective. I don't speak against anybody who wants to get into a legal retail business. I think competition is good. I do know from experience in the community I represent with a cannabis production facility that was coming into play a few years back, there's a lot of controversy. I did have our CMP liaison officer speak in the community, and he said there's a lot of misconceptions around what occurs with cannabis. And he said the troubles he experiences are from liquor. So fights at the end of the night from nightclubs, it's liquor that causes problems. He doesn't see young men smoking cannabis that are now in fist fights out on the streets or in the community. Alcohol is the bigger issue if people feel that there are issues from cannabis use. So that was just a comparison that he brought forward. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions there. But bottom line, whatever is being sold, I support retail, I support competition. So I will be voting against this motion. We do have more speakers, however. Director Ghgs, you're next up, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, the chair. I think a lot of what I'm feeling has been said too. It is really difficult when there's a director who we know that Director Obrick knows his community the best. I'm just very uncomfortable as a local government getting into the competition of free enterprise, and so I can't support it. I just don't think it's the role that we should be taking on. I do support OK Falls looking at the bylaw and kind of the community plan, so there is some bigger guidance. But with this particular investment, they did their due diligence and they put in their money, and I feel like that we need to support that. So I'll be voting against it.
Okay, thank you. Director Holmes, go ahead, please.
Just a question, are there any other applications for cannabis retail for OK Falls coming forward? Is there anything in the works for the future beyond this one?
Mr. Garish, do you have any other applications right now?
We do not.
So
Okay, thank you.
Could I just then comment then, if this motion as presented fails and this is approved, Director Obrick might wish to give a notice of motion to put a hold on any future accepting any future applications for OK Falls until such a time that the bylaw is reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Director Sentis, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just from the perspective of what Penticton has done, at the very beginning, we set out our own criteria to ensure that the best possible scenario has been set out in Penticton. Of course, I'm sensitive to what Director Obrick has stated. I've read all the comments from his community. However, I do support free enterprise. I don't think it's appropriate for us as a governing body to impose into free enterprise. I would suggest that perhaps what the community of Okanagan Falls needs to do is set out criteria to further enhance their opinion of what they want to have and what they don't want to have. That's certainly their prerogative. We set ours out and put a 2-year time frame on it, so it's currently in the review process to see if we need to change anything or add anything. But I think the bottom line, as tough as it can be emotionally for those that are already in business and established there, I just don't feel comfortable getting involved without OK Falls having their own criteria. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Obrick, go ahead, please.
Yes, and thank you very much. I'm just going to comment on some of the comments made and add some information. And Director Santos, thank you very much for your comments. We're also free enterprise. We are very much in favor of rights and freedoms and law. My predecessor, Director Sidden, at this board table tried to speak to this and was unsuccessful, getting criteria specific to OK Falls. We don't need to go down that history path, but I'm familiar with that history. I can speak to the criteria you're speaking of. I've made a motion, as you're well aware, some months ago, and it's going to take us a couple years of process to get there, and that's slow and it's unfortunate. It's not good, but that's our process. With respect to Director Roberts, thank you so much for your suggestion for notice of motion. I'll make it later today, and I hope I can count on this board for some support. I will tell you that this board has a role, oversight. We have a responsibility. Indeed, I spoke to staff specifically about our bylaw, which I think could be much better. And I think when we go through process, we'll get it much better. But I'll tell you this, Joanne Peachy, who's no longer with us, I asked her, are you familiar in other jurisdictions of this kind of an issue coming up? And when has a council or a board exercised their discretion, their oversight authority? And she told me of an example in Kamloops, which was fascinating. Kamloops is a municipality, of course. And she said the council there, it was an application in a center that had a drug rehabilitation office. And the community outrage was so phenomenal that council in Kamloops did not support that applicant because of community concern. Community concern. Now we don't have a drug rehab office adjacent to this proposed location, but Kamloops gives us guidance that it is possible. To the question of liability, which I think was raised by Director Roberts, we have authority to do this. It's our authority. The law exists. Don Lidstone, who speaks, I've heard him speak at many conferences now from Lidstone and Company. He talks about how the courts respect the authority of local government on these decisions. And again, CAO Bill Neal confirmed this a moment ago, and he's absolutely correct. In a free society, people can sue each other. That doesn't mean you're going to be successful. The fact that you bring a lawsuit doesn't mean you're going to win. And, you know, there's a lot of law in this area that's very specific to the right of local government when it comes to planning and to exercising its discretion, to find that balance. This is what democracy is about. In theory, that's what democracy is. Here, I really appreciate the board debate. I appreciate all the good comments made. I'm sure the applicant and the community are listening, and I want to thank everybody. I obviously cannot support this, and I'm very grateful to those of you who've read the materials. This is of concern. It impacts our economic situation in many ways, community development, economic development. We need to pay attention to these details. And it's hard when you don't live in the community. It's hard when you don't live in OK Falls. It's hard to find the energy, the time even, to listen and pay attention. And I get that. So I want to thank all of you for the time and respect you've given us today. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Obrick. Directors, I'm going to call the question now. So I want to clarify that the motion on the floor is to object to the application. And this is a corporate vote. So on the motion to object, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, hands can come down, and now I'm going to ask for those opposed. Okay, we've got Director Bob Coyne, Director Watt, Director Sentis, Director Gettins, Director Holmes, Director Robinson, Director Pendergraft, Director Knodel, Director McCordoff, Director Spencer Coyne, Director, someone's hands in the way, Johansson, Director Johansson, Director Kozakovich, Director Philpott, Adickery. Did I miss anybody else, please? Let me know, just for the record. Okay, so that motion fails. Yeah. Okay, so folks, that takes us still on this, looking for a motion. Director Spencer Coyne, please.
I'll make the original staff recommended motion.
Okay, so that's been moved, seconded by Director Pendergraft. So we have a motion on the floor again to support the application. Any questions or comments on that? This is still a corporate vote. I'll therefore call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands could come down, and now I would like to call for those opposed. Okay, those opposed are Traynor, Bush, Obrick, Monteith, Vasilaki, Roberts. Did I miss anybody? Okay, motion carries. Okay, directors, that takes us down to B3, Manufactured Home Park Redevelopment Policy Review and Update of Hillside Steep Slope Development Permit Area Policy Review, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. We had both of these policies at committee 2 weeks ago, and just really don't need them anymore, Madam Chair, so we're recommending that they both be rescinded.
Okay, and we can move them together? Or do you want
Sure.
them, okay, do you want them separate?
Yeah, they're both the same group, voting group, so sure.
Okay, looking for a director to move these recommendations to rescind. Director Spencer Coyne is moving them. Director Holmes is seconding them. Any questions on these? We did discuss this at the last board meeting. Director Obrick, go ahead, please.
I have a couple questions, and sorry I missed the last meeting, but is this specific to Area D?
CAO?
I believe the hillside steep slope development permit only applies to Area D, but we'd have to check with Mr. Garish.
Okay, I'll go to Mr. Garish. Go ahead, please.
Oh, that's correct. It's only Area D.
Okay.
Okay, my second question is, why did the chair not come to me first on the request for motion? I'm just curious on a procedure. I notice we almost always go to the electoral area director when it's that area, but this time we did not. Just wondering why we departed from the normal practice.
Yeah, it's not listed in my notes, Director Obrick. It would
Thank
be
you very
listed
much. Thank you.
for
I have another
me.
question. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. You didn't know. Next question for staff. I haven't had a chance to speak to staff on this issue, and I'm trusting this is nothing more than a housekeeping matter, and I'm all in favor of housekeeping, cleaning things up that need cleaning. Is there any material impact by the rescinding of these two matters on our current rules that exist in Area D? The reason I ask is steep slope development, hillside, real big deal. And if there's no material impact, I can support this. But my question is there any material impact, or is it only just simply house cleaning, which is what it looks like, but I'm not clear.
Mr. Garish?
Sure. From staff's perspective, we see this as housekeeping. The hillside steep slope policy was introduced to give us a 12-month period to make changes to the OCP. That 12-month period expired in 2018, I believe, and the OCP has since been adopted or amended to reflect the changes that we wanted to incorporate. So the hillside steep slope policy really serves no more purpose anymore. The sunset clause has taken effect, and the OCP has been updated. With regard to the manufactured home park policy, separate changes to the development procedures bylaw, we feel addresses a lot of the early notification requirements otherwise contained in that policy, and that further to some of the concerns the board had raised previously in 2016 about the relocation plan for manufactured home parks, that would seem to be redundant as well, and that the act otherwise allows for notification for compensation of tenants of these parks. So I hope that helps.
Spoken with you before meeting if I'd had a chance, but that clarification helps a lot, and I will support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? This is a corporate vote. So we have both of the motions moved. I will call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. And was anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're going to go down to community services. C1, bylaw number 2941-2021, Area D Community Works Gas Tax Reserve Expenditure Bylaw, CAO.
This is to fund the development, or I think the resurfacing in this case, Madam Chair, of a tennis pickleball court in Okanagan Falls, and to finish off the Garnett Family Park.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Obrick.
Yes, thank you, and I'd like to make the administrative recommendation motion, please. Thank you.
Okay, seconded by Director Bush. Any questions or comments on this? This is a weighted corporate vote requiring a 2/3 majority. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. And was anybody opposed? Motion carries. We'll go down to D, Legislative Services, D1, bylaw number 2789.01, Board Procedure Amendment Bylaw, CAO.
This follows our discussion at committee on Bill 10, Madam Chair, which enables local governments to now adopt the changes that have come forward for electronic meetings over the past year and a half, and now to entrench it into our procedure bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Looking for a mover for this. Director Roberts, are you moving recommendation? Yes, thank you. Seconded by Director Knodel. Any questions or comments? Okay, this is a corporate vote requiring a 2/3 majority. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We'll go to D2, Oliver and District Area Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2844/2019, CAO.
Yeah, so a change on this one, Madam Chair. We want to proceed with the conversion from the letters patent to service establishment bylaw, but all of the other issues with regards to the loan authorization for the Oliver Arena, we want to postpone those or just leave them off the agenda, Madam Chair. We received additional information and we need to recalculate the information that's going to come to the board on that. So we're recommending that we proceed with the Oliver and District Arena conversion and service establishment bylaw for 3 readings and then just leave the rest of it off.
Okay, so thank you. I'll go to Director Knodel on this.
I'd like to get CAO Newell to explain that to me clearly. We have a necessity to alter the funding, potential funding issue, and I want to make sure that that's left to our discretion here later.
CAO?
We've received updated information, Madam Chair, and we just need to recalculate what's going to come forward for the loan authorization.
Okay, correct. So we just need the very first line in the recommendation to be moved today. The rest is going to come back to us. Are you okay with moving that, Director Knodel? Yes, okay. Is there a seconder, Director Roberts? Okay, so any questions or comments on the recommendation? Okay, so just so everyone's clear, the motion on the floor is that bylaw number 2942, Oliver and District Arena Conversion and Service Establishment bylaw be read a first, second, and third time. And this is a corporate vote. Okay, so I will call the question then. All in favor? Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Okay, that motion carries. We're going to go down to D3, Town of Oliver Boundary Adjustment, CAO.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So the recommendation that came forward in your board package, I wanted to make a small adjustment to Madam Chair. So what we're going to recommend, we're not the approval authority on boundary adjustments, and really what the province wants to know is whether we object or not. So our administrative recommendation is that the regional district not object to the proposed boundary adjustment proposal from the Town of Oliver, which would see the inclusion of 6450 Spartan Street into the Town of Oliver boundary and removed from electoral area C. So again, just in that first line, that the regional district not object.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Knodel.
I have no objection to this. It's in order to put the Rogers Cell Tower in the town boundary. Thank you.
Okay, so you're moving that administrative recommendation. Thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Johansson, thank you very much. Any questions or concerns on this? This is a corporate vote. Okay, I will call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. And was anybody opposed? Motion carries. And so now we go to D4, and that's where from the consent agenda we moved item F, which was the Corporate Services Committee minutes of July 22nd, 2021. So I'll go to Director Gettens on that, please.
Thank you to the chair. At our last meeting in July 22nd, we heard about the Enterprise Risk Management Plan from 2021. And then in the notes, and I understand actually from that meeting that the intention is that staff brings back the mitigation plans and we have that discussion further in our strategic planning. So I just want a clarity if that is correct, because in the minutes it says that we had those moderate, or the plans to how we're going to mitigate those moderate risks identified. So I don't agree that we got the plan. So I just want to know what the next steps are with that. I know we know who's in charge of those high to high risk, and I'm actually specifically talking about the increasing parochialism trend of the board being identified as the second highest risk to the regional district's productivity. And I really need to have more conversation around this before we go into budget. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on the process, because we didn't do this in 2020. If I could just have that clarified, please.
Okay, CAO.
So the Enterprise Risk Management Plan is the first step in our strategic planning cycle. And we do that more or less in the spring. We identify sort of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, so that when our departments get into planning for 2022, they can identify those risks and then work them into the corporate business plan. And of course, anything that goes in the corporate business plan would have to be identified in the budget if it requires resources. So departments are starting to work on the 2022 budget, and they're starting to work on the 2022 business plan. And we would bring those forward for administrative discussion in September. We do our interdependency workshop in October, and it would get to the board for discussion sometime in November, Madam Chair. So that would be the intent.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have a follow-up on that, Director Gittins?
I do. I guess I don't feel like that I know what the plan is to mitigate that risk. And I think specifically to the one that involves the board, I think the board has to be part of that discussion of what the plan is. So I want to make sure that we have opportunity for that discussion before we go in to further budget discussions in 2020 for 2022. I think it's a really important conversation, and we didn't talk about it very much at the last meeting. But I think we need to make the room to have that conversation and to hear what the plan is, and to make sure that this board is on board with that plan, because I think that it could really derail our efforts if staff are feeling like this is their second biggest threat to the organization is our approach as board members.
So is that coming forward this fall, CAO, as a discussion point?
So yeah, so that would come forward for discussion during the business planning process. Typically what would happen out of that is nothing in 2021, is that we would bring forward the issue and the mitigation plan for activities in 2022. And I can tell you generally what would happen with that would probably be a discussion about information or education or just further discussion. But yeah, there would definitely be an opportunity prior to anything being formalized on the risk management plan.
Okay. So Director Gittins, did the minutes, did they need to be adjusted? Is it worded wrong in there?
I don't feel like that we have the plans for those high and moderate risks identified, like the mitigation plan for those. I think we heard it. We heard what the risks were. We heard who's responsible for the risks, but I don't feel that the board has received the plan of how we're going to mitigate them.
Okay, so that is correct. So then we, sounds like we need to adjust those minutes, and they'll come back again adjusted for the future meeting then.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you very much for that. Okay, board, so then that takes us down to E, CAO reports. Go ahead, CAO, and I know that's where we need to do ratification of the SOLs.
Can you bring that report up with the recommendations, Danny? Yeah, so again, the Emergency Program Act enables local authority to declare a state of local emergency when there is imminent threat of risk to persons or property. And we have identified a number of areas where there is that threat. So we've declared the state of local emergency, but of course the state of local emergency only lasts for 7 days, and then we have to reapply to the minister for an extension on each of those. So this then, What is that little thing there? Yeah, there we go. So we're recommending, Madam Chair, that the declaration of state of local emergency for Area D that expired August 1st be extended to the 8th, and that when that expires on the 8th, that be extended to the 15th, because that will again be prior to our next board meeting, and there is nothing going to change on that declaration in that period. And we would also say that the state of local emergency for electoral area H that expired July 28th be extended to the 3rd, and that the one that expired on the 3rd be extended to the 10th, and then speculating based on the Brenda Creek fire and the Garrison Lake fire that will extend then until August 17th. So we're recommending that. And then we're recommending on electoral area C that is impacted by the Incoming fire, that declaration that expired on August 2nd be extended to the 9th. The one that will expire on the 9th be extended to the 16th. And then for area A, which is also impacted by the Incoming fire, the state of local emergency that expired on August 3rd be extended to the 10th. And anticipating that will continue on past the 10th, we're recommending that it be extended to the 17th. And then all of those have to go into the Minister of State for emergency preparedness management.
Okay, great, thank you. So looking for a director who will move these all together, please. Director Bob Coyne is moving them. Is there a seconder? So, Director Gettens, thank you very much. Any questions or clarification on these? Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. Question, since Area G has a alert, does it not need to continue with a state of emergency, or is the alert able to be carried out without?
CAO?
We only require a state of local emergency if we're ordering people out of their homes, Madam Chair, and in that case, we are not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Hands can come down. And anybody opposed? Motion carries. Anything else, CAO?
Nothing from me, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Chair's report. Nothing new from me other than continuing with wildfire orders and alerts and information meetings. And we do have a meeting today. There will be a live information meeting from the boardroom at 2 o'clock if anybody's able to join us for that. I'll go on to F2 then, director's motions. CAO, we have 2A listed as the director motion to establish budget parameters, which we did debate and vote on in committee previously.
Yeah, so because that made it onto the floor at a board meeting, Madam Chair, and then got referred, we have to deal with it at a board meeting. So we're now recommending, let's get back to that one.
So basically the motion that
so the motion that is on the floor is that finance present RDOS budgets to directors for all services with a -2, 0.2, and 3% increase, etc. And then that got referred back to staff for report. We presented our report at the last committee, and it's the recommendation now from committee that that be defeated. So, but nevertheless, Madam Chair, the motion on the floor is that that finance present RDOS budgets to directors for all services, etc.
Okay. So since it was defeated at committee, it still has to be dealt with at board.
Yeah,
We debated it at
committee is
committee.
not a
Okay.
decision-making authority.
Correct. Okay, so that motion, folks, is on the floor now. And we did have that discussion in committee. So is there any further question or discussion on that before I call the vote on it? Okay, so, Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, I just want to share with fellow directors, I did receive a lot of several calls from different community members, not only mine, but others as well, that actually appreciated the motion and felt that a change from a resident perspective was needed, that directors looking at a variety of budget options was a good idea. And I just share that I'm not alone in thinking that. So I know that it's a lot of work and I know that it's a lot on staff, and I respect that. My intention with the motion was to have a discussion and see where it went with the budget changes, because I'm not alone. And it's frustrating that I kind of felt like everybody went silent. When we go through the budget process, there's a lot of side conversations and frustration about the budget process and not knowing how to cut and where to cut and how to balance our budget for our residents. So I kind of feel like we do need something, and I did hear from other people that felt the same way. So I just want to share that.
Thank you. Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
Thank you to the chair. After hearing Director Monteith's, when she put out this as a motion, I did sit down and talk with our CFO, and I'm looking forward to a report that he's coming out. He was stating during the budget process that providing a means to where we can dig as deep as we want. He's providing a process. I don't know if this is a place or if there's any clarity in regard to that, but again, I heard from the CFO that there's going to be a process in place that each one of us can dig as deep as we want, and it will be made clear, and he will set the applications in place. So, and I was satisfied by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's great to hear that, Director Gettens, and I understand what Director Monteith is saying. Just the way that motion is written, the amount of work would be huge. I think it would be extremely challenging, very time consuming, but I think we are going to see some good changes coming forward that will make the process better for everybody involved. Director Gettens, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to support the intention of what Director Monteith, when I understand why you brought this motion forward, and I agree, the budget process has always been a real struggle, and we're not always seeing everything together at the same time, which adds to the confusion. I do understand why staff are feeling this particular approach is probably more work than the results that we're going to get, but I am looking forward to doing this again with our new CFO second time around and see a different approach to this. But I do appreciate you bringing it forward, and you're not alone in that concern as well. I just think the approach or the suggestion in this motion was it just need a little bit of a different approach, but you're not alone for sure.
Thank you, and go ahead, Director Knodel.
I also would like to put my support behind Director Monteith's intent. I do understand that there's considerable difficulty as it's written, but hopefully in the future we can come up with a hybrid model that fits a little better and answers those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Monteith, go ahead, please.
To the chair, it could be something as simple as managers involving us in asking, what kind of where we're going, what we want to see, what we want to do. I've been asking for a reduction in services and I'm not getting it. And I've asked, for reviews, I've asked for reduction in budgets, I've asked directly to the manager. It's frustrating when I'm doing everything we've been told to do and stuff is still not happening. I don't know how to make it better other than changing the process. So I'm frustrated.
Thank you. Director Obert, go ahead, please.
Yes, and thank you. And I just wanted to add the same appreciation to Director Monteith. She's right. In our community as well, there's concern. The spirit of what she has proposed is appreciated. It's a step in the right direction. I don't know what the exact answer is, but for those of you who are from municipalities, there's 10 of you at this board, and I'm looking at Director Holmes, for example, and I think he gets frustrated when I talk like this. But for us, this is a big deal, and we struggle. Director Coyne, I know Director Coyne in the past has indicated he doesn't have problems. Well, I'm glad for Director Coyne that he doesn't have problems, but please listen to those of us who've had some challenges. We're governing the electoral areas. We're not governing Penticton. We're not governing Osoyoos. We're governing those rural areas. And it is difficult. It is difficult. And I just support Director Monteith in her effort to see us find a better way forward. I am very impressed by Jim Zaffino, our current finance manager. I thought John Kervink was wonderful. I think staff are sincere and doing a really good effort to help us. So that's appreciated. That doesn't mean that we can't do better. I think it's hard. I get that. For those of you from the municipalities, it may even be frustrating to you to listen to, but for us, it matters. And so I'm looking around the Hollywood squares, and I hope those of you from the municipalities are listening, because we need your help. You're a big part of the vote. As you know, you've got the power, and we sometimes feel like we're almost, I don't know if I just lost the connection, but anyhow, thank you very much, Director Monteith.
Oh, there it is.
Okay,
Right there.
so directors, we just put on the screen just so you can be reminded of what the motion was that we discussed in committee. So the motion is that finance present RDOS budgets to directors for all services with a -2, a 0, a 2, and a 3% increase at the budget committee meetings annually, and that finance present RDOS budget in a live format to allow directors to visually see impact to each electoral area and member municipalities during decision making during all budget discussions. So hopefully everybody did read that report previously. And so now we're going to move forward with the vote on this again. And so Danny, I'm going to need you to take it down just so I can see the hands up and stuff. Okay, so directors, I'm going to call the question on that. All in favor? Okay, hands can come down. Those opposed? Okay, so we've got Gattens, Roberts, Bob Coyne, Bush, Trainer, Holmes, Pendergraft, Robinson, Sentes, Johansson, Kozakovich, Spencer Coyne, Watt, and did I miss anybody? Okay, that motion fails. So we're still on F2 then, folks. Was there any notice of motions to present today? Director Gettens, go ahead, please.
Great, thanks. This is another one that came out from our meeting, our last meeting on July 22nd, and we were discussing staff turnover and how, you know, the planning department and losing some really good staff. There was a comment made about being a training organization and that the regional district, you know, has recognized that they're a training organization. And I have a real struggle with that because it's so much more costly than retaining staff. So I wanted to put forward a notice of motion that we as a board get a presentation on the exit interviews of the staff that have left over the last 12 months, so we can figure out what our role is in supporting retention. And if it's money, like that's pretty black and white. If it's something else, maybe we have a role in supporting that. So I would like to have that presentation be brought forward to the board, that that we take a look at why people are leaving so we can figure out what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Director Getton. So that would be the one that you had sent out last night, correct? So I'm just going to read what we have in writing. The notice of motion is that administration presents to the board for discussion the findings from the exit interviews of recently departed staff before the 2022 budget discussions begin. Okay, so folks, that's a notice of motion. It's not up for debate tonight. We're going to see that come back in 2 weeks for discussion. So thank you, Director Gettens. And then Director Obrick, did I see you with a hand up? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, yes, please. And I'm taking the very wise and good counsel of Director Roberts, and I will make a notice of motion to have
Director
a moratorium. What did I say? I'm so sorry. It's Robert.
No, it was Director Holmes that made that statement.
Oh, wasn't you who made the recommendation to make a notice of motion to put a moratorium on? Oh, I thought it was you. Well, you deserve credit anyway. You do a great job. So thank you, Director Holmes. A moratorium on the cannabis retail applications until we have completed the review and amendment potential arising from our retail cannabis bylaw specific to Area D. I'm happy to participate in other areas that want to be the same or different from us, but I would like to make that notice of motion just to make it clear to the marketplace that this is happening, and I don't want people surprised that this is happening. It's clearly before the board now. It's going to take a long time, and quicker would be better, but I don't think we have the ability to go quicker. So this is and my apologies, Director Roberts. For some reason I thought it was you. Apologies. Thank you.
Director Ober, could you just clarify the wording for your notice of motion, please?
Yeah, that there be a moratorium on cannabis retail applications in Area D pending the review and potential amendment coming from that review, which is a motion already before the board.
Okay, thank you. That's good. So folks, we're going to see that notice of motion come forward again at our next board meeting for discussion and a vote. Thank you, Director Obrick. Anybody else with a notice of motion for today? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. That takes us then down to F3. Did any director have an update you'd like to provide today from your community? Director Obrick, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is a very personal update from my community. And I want to say thank you to Director Santes and Director McCordoff, and indeed the past boards that came before us for the work done on the Penticton Regional Hospital. When I had the tour in April of 2019, I was so impressed by the wonderful job done and all the work done over many, many years by many, many people. And I'll tell you, having now been a user of that facility, I have two things to add that I didn't know before. And the first is how fortunate we all are. That facility, spectacular. The service, the experience I had, the surgeons through to the staff, the custodial staff, everybody, just amazing. The stress they're under is horrific. The pandemic, they're short-staffed. They work hard. The technologies are impressive, and I just want to say well done and thank you, because you don't really appreciate it the same until you're there, scared and getting good care. And so thank you all. And then a second point is when I was following the doctor's orders and trying to exercise and with the walker and going around the ward, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to, but I couldn't help looking into some of the rooms. And I saw people who were suffering, saw people who were there for a serious thing. And I began very quickly to avert my gaze and to look down, to look in the hall. But it made me aware from my own experience, but from the experience of all the people there, it can be pretty serious business. And it's not a holiday. They're not there to have fun. I wanted to go home as fast as I could. And for those of us who sit on this board and by virtue of our legislation, we're on the hospital board. I just wanted to say that because I'll speak for myself. I didn't appreciate what a big deal this is until you're there and you're getting the care. And it's so important for us in the regional district, Okanagan-Similkameen. I think it's important for all of us. And I'm just grateful for what a good facility and good staff we have in that hospital. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Obrick. Did anybody else have an update to provide? Director Roberts, go ahead, please.
I'll make it quick. I'm assuming before our next board meeting, when BC Ambulance comes back before us, that get an opportunity for everybody to pose questions. And at the same time, if you want to articulate or understand how to best present it, you can always give me a call in regards to my position. I probably should leave kind of like the positive Similkameen news to BCEHS when they come and visit. But thank you again for Mayor Coyne and Mayor Bauer, who put, there was letters that went out and as directors as well, that it looks like the Similkameen now is going to have in Princeton and in Karameas full-time ambulances just like the rest of you. And it's exciting for my crew, it's exciting for my community, and I couldn't keep it quiet. So there you go. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Director Roberts. Anybody else with an update? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. If that's the case, then folks, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn for today. Director Robinson, followed by Director Sentis, and I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anybody opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, directors. Stay safe, and we'll see you back here very soon. And if you're able to join in at 2 o'clock for the live information release, Eric will be leading that out of the boardroom here. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.